Te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. Welcome everybody to today's Kōrau Tōtōpū meeting. Please let me or the Democracy Advisor know if you intend to leave the meeting. We'll be planning to have morning tea about 10:30. Apologies. We have apologies for lateness from Councillor Winera. Are there any other apologies? There appear to be none. I will move them. Councillor O'Neill will second. That is carried. Conflict of interest declarations, does anybody have any to declare? Appears to be none. Confirmation of minutes. I will move the motion to accept the minutes of our meeting held on 29th of October 2024. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill again, thank you. Inai ka potia tia te motini. I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Oh, sorry. It's because I didn't see a screen up and so I was confused. Ka whakapuaki o kua mana te motini. I declare the motion carried. There are no items not on the agenda, so we move to public participation. We have one public participant, Mai Graham Clark, on behalf of the Wellington Residents Coalition, to speak to us today about water. Graham, you have 10 minutes, including time for questions if you'd like to leave any.
Thank you. My name is Graham Clark. I'm a member of the Wellington Residents Coalition. I'm a retired union official. I represented Wellington's leak fixers from 1992 to 2015. I live in Vogeltown, which was a very leaky suburb. Over the last 24 years, which is the same age as the pipe, the 50 metres of pipe from the main to my house and 5 others has leaked 10 times, mostly at the Toby. This unhappy state of affairs gave me a lot of contact with Wellington Water. While my comments are directed at water matters, the same principles could be applied elsewhere. Wellington City Council's long-term plan should cut out as much waste as possible. From my observation, the waste of resources by Wellington Water is staggering. For the current year, according to the record online, the council has given $16.878 million to Wellington Water to fix leaks. When CityCare, the contractor before Fulton Hogan, was fixing leaks, that sum would have fixed well over 10,000 leaks. In its last year of fixing leaks for Wellington City Council, the Regional Council, that was in the year 2000, fixed 10,700 leaks. Last year, Fulton Hogan fixed 3,254. If Fulton Hogan spends the $16 million at the reported average of $4,500 per leak, in the current year, that is 3,750 leaks fixed. The leak fixes average about 8 hours per leak. 8 labour hours per leak. One person can fix up to 5 small leaks a day. A team of 4 or 5 might be needed for a very large leak all day plus overtime. On average, it is a total labour cost of less than $500 for 8 labour hours. Now the leak fixers have a traffic control team working with them. For a job on the pavement done by 2 leak fixers, there can be 4 traffic controllers, 2 additional trucks for traffic control present. If we were not paying for that, it would be an hilarious joke. The Regional Council through the 90s worked to increase the productivity of leak fixers. For example, single service person crews were introduced for the majority of leak repairs. CityCare fixed leaks without a huge crew of traffic controllers. It fixed over 20,000 leaks in the region in its last year, which was 2018 and 19. The council could trim its costs for fixing leaks by the following: insist that Wellington Water require its contractor to train its leak fixers in traffic management. This would enable the work mostly to be done without a separate traffic control crew. Tonya Haskell initiated this concept when she worked for New Zealand Bus for crews that recovered buses in breakdown situations, a far more risky situation for the workers than fixing a leak on the pavement. 2, insist that all traffic management plans involving a separate crew be approved by Wellington City Council. Refuse to consent to traffic plans that are wasteful and profiteering. 3, start a leak fixing and water conservation service by workers employed directly by Wellington City Council. Take charge of all repairs at the Toby, which is the largest category of leak, and take the funding for that work off Wellington Water and any subsequent new water entity. This would stop the current situation of multiple wasteful leak visits to any leak at a Toby where Wellington Water tries to work out if it was more than 40 centimetres past the Toby or not, and whether they should send a repair crew or not. 4, the Wellington City Council leak fixing service could also have water conservation duties. For example, they could check whether houses that have a leaking Toby have a water pressure reduction valve and if that valve is working. If the water pressure at an outside tap is 7 bar, it is certain that the water pressure reduction valve is not working if there was one installed in the first place. A pressure of 3.5 bar provides a good, safe water service for a resident. Ensuring the installation of working water pressure reduction valves will considerably reduce water use for showers, for example. This service would also help protect residents from water damage in their homes. Wellington City Council could better direct its investment, ensuring that it is not simply throwing money at a problem. For example, we're told the pipes are old, 21 in poor or very poor condition. What does that mean? It's an invitation to stump up money for a huge alleged problem that may or may not exist. We can have no confidence in what Wellington Water tells us. They went on public record saying the oldest pipe in Wellington still in use was laid in 1840 below the Basin Reserve. Anyone who knows the slightest bit about Wellington knows that is laughable. The information you need from any water entity for every leak it fixes is: how old was the pipe, what is the average water pressure at that location, how many leaks have been repaired within 500 metres of that location in the last year. Where there is a correlation of old pipe, multiple leaks and high pressure, that is where investment should be targeted for pipe renewal. If the pipe is less than 70 years and there are multiple leaks and the water pressure is high, that says target investment at controlling water pressure. That will extend the life of the pipes. You'll be asked to commit $160 million for the installation of water meters. The reason for the introduction of water meters is not to find leaks, nor is it to conserve water, these being the standard reasons trotted out by the so-called experts. The real reason is, as stated by Kerry Prendergast in her report, it is to give the water entity control of its own revenue. The owners of the water supply, now to be called consumers, will be asked to pay for the amount of water they use directly to the water entity. Everyone must have water. There is only one set of pipes, so its supply is a monopoly. The so-called experts who are to be put on the board of the water entity will be able to set a price at a level that covers either their demonstrated incompetence or their obvious profligacy. What a waste, don't do that. What goes with direct charging is the removal of 3 waters rates, and according to Kerry Prendergast, a reported average bill of $3,000 to $4,000 per household. This means for the third of residents who are tenants, the landlord gets to keep the money formerly paid for 3 waters in their rates, and the tenants get a new 3 waters bill of $60 a week. This is a massive, unjustified transfer of wealth. Given that it relates to water, it could be called a neoliberal wet dream, turning the working class into the great unwashed for the enrichment of the landlord class. The money for water meters would have to be borrowed. Cutting that out and saving the interest and debt repayment would provide the leeway for a cost-effective plan to fix leaks, and address the need for additional water supply over summer, and ensure that water is conserved. When your observer or the minister or other know-nothings say we've got to have water meters, ask them how much water consumption do they save per resident. We currently use, after removing commercial use and leakage, 160 litres per person per day in Wellington. That is about the same as Auckland. How much less water will we use when we have water meters? They won't be able to honestly tell you. They will respond saying it will help us get private leaks fixed. If they really want to deal with private leaks, they could instead install a detector in private pipes for far less than water meters cost that notify a leak, and if they wanted to be super fancy, that turns the water off until the leak is fixed. Or the leak can be detected for free by simply listening at the Toby. Rather than put the water entity in the hands of so-called experts with their impressive remuneration, a board elected by residents would be far cheaper and more transparent in its decision-making and responsive to the interests of the owners of the water asset. Our interest is to have a council that is run mindful of imposing growing costs on its residents, either by rate rises or new bills created by turning water from a human right into a commodity.
We do have a question from Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would be possible to share some of the data that you had around the 160 litres per person per day, because while that is lower than what we are reporting, if you looked across New Zealand, that would still be higher, well, even, yeah, across New Zealand, but also internationally, that would still be higher than what other areas are using.
Well, all my information on statistics like this come from Wellington Water. The average per person in the Wellington region is 397 litres. Deduct leaks, deduct commercial use, it brings it down to 160 litres per person per day, which I'm told Auckland is 155 litres. So not a huge amount of difference. If you want to actually look at history, look at what amount of water was used in 1990 and how that's changed. In 1990, 162 million litres per day on average. In 2014-15, 135 million litres per person per day, and only after Fulton Hogan took up did it start going up beyond 160 million litres. The fact of the matter is that water efficient appliances are steadily reducing the amount of water that people use. If you actually encourage the transition to away from top-loaded washing machines to front-loaded, for every 8 households, that's water for one more household. There's just a total lack of analysis. It's all based on what do they do in England. We send Campbell Barry over to England.
I'm sorry, we're out of time, Graham. Thank you so much.
I'll wait round for morning tea. If you've got another question, ask me then.
Thank you. We now move on to item 2.1, the Quarter 1 report. Lloyd, is Lloyd going to come? No, my Lloyd. And Andrea to introduce the report.
Good morning, councillors. I'm pleased to just introduce this quarterly report to you. The report, as you see, and as those of you who were able to attend the Q&A yesterday will note that it is a significant change since the last quarterly report, not only in terms of its presentation, but also of its structure and layout. That's part of a journey we're on. We've gone through a process, as we do after every LTP, of looking forward and saying, what does a new LTP require us to report, and how can we report that in a way which is useful to you as governors. We also spent some time talking to quite a number of you to get a better understanding of the needs and interests that you might have in the quarterly report itself. That's produced a roadmap, and this is the first part of that roadmap. There'll be, as we go through subsequent quarters, there'll be a number of different developments that we'll introduce as we go forward throughout this LTP, whether it be the amendment and subsequent annual plans as well. So I'll take the report as read, but we're happy to take any questions and suggestions.
I did suggest after the Q&A that we might not have any further questions, and it looks like that is correct. Thank you so much, and that was a good Q&A session yesterday, so thanks to the team for that. Councillor Panovich, are you all right to move this from online? It looks like maybe you are not, so I will move it. And Deputy Mayor Foon will second. I just want to thank the team for the work, the new format and the process of all, the conversations that we all had and sort of adapting the reporting to,
Yes.
Oh, you're too late, John. I've already moved it. But would you like to speak, John, as part of debate?
Yeah, I'll just say that, of course, we are in the first quarter of a new LTP, so it's early days, but it's positive to see that we are actually doing better than budget.
Thanks, Councillor. Is there any further debate? Councillor Calvert.
Yes, so look, I just want to commend the officers for the work that they have done on bringing forward a new type of quarterly report. I think this information is, whilst it still contains complex information because we're a complex organisation, I think it's going to be a lot easier for the public or the informed public to understand our performance and how we're going along. So I think I do, and I recommend if anybody's interested in the performance of this council is to review it from a public perspective. And I think also the report is really useful as we now go into an LTP amendment, and because within that report is the high-level things and the high-level significant projects that we've got on our books. And if we're going to make savings or reductions, we should be looking at those in the first instance, those significant projects. So having that information is going to be really beneficial as we go into the workshops next week. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Foon. Thank you for seconding as well.
Kia ora, yeah, and thanks to the team. I'm really enjoying the updated reporting. It is great to see it aligning with the current LTP, and it does make for an easier read. I would just like to point out that it is really good for a council to see the SDGs surfacing, and they're aligning to our community outcomes. That's on page 81. So I really look forward to seeing how they will evolve and how we will be able to measure our impact in the community. I'm also enjoying the deep dive, and thank you for the Te Atakura report, but I'll look forward to that coming in a more fulsome way later this year. Thank you.
Councillor Pannett.
Just really briefly, like Deputy Mayor, the deep dive into Te Atakura was helpful, and it shows that we obviously have a way to go. It's always good to make progress, but we're just not hitting our targets, and so obviously apart from we need to be accountable for that. But obviously we're going to have some new budget discussions, so that will provide hopefully a good opportunity to look at how we can meet those targets. Kia ora.
All right, it appears that there is no further debate, so we will go to a vote. Councillor Panovich. All right.
Yes.
Thank you. That has carried. Thank you. We will now move on to item 2.2, which is the CCO 23-24 annual reports. So welcome. We've got many of our guests here, our family from the CCOs, and so they're going to come and present in turn, and there will be an opportunity for questions. And so I'd like to, before we actually move the paper, so I'd like to welcome Wellington NZ, Tracy Bridges and Heidi Morton. No mai.
Whiringa-ā-rangi, tēnā koutou katoa. Lovely to be here today, councillors. Thank you. First of all, apologies on behalf of John Allen. Many of you will know he suffered a great loss last week. Even despite that, he wanted me to say that he's sorry not to be here. And I also want to apologise on behalf of Catherine Jones, who's the Chief Executive of Creative HQ. Going forward, I'm going to involve her in these presentations as well, but she couldn't be here today. But we do have, luckily, Heidi Morton with us, so she's going to do some of the presenting with me and answer some of your questions. As always, there's a lot to get through. I'm going to go through quite quickly because I want to try and leave time for questions, so I'm going to rattle through. The one thing that I hope you take away from this is that with the money we receive from ratepayers via our shareholders, we are firmly focused on impact. Everything we do, we are constantly trying to think, is this making a measurable difference to our city? And so on this first slide that's jammed packed with figures, if you flick, oh, thanks, that's you, not me. Thank God for Heidi. So in our annual report, we report against 13 direct measures and 15 indirect measures. This year, we exceeded all but two of our direct KPIs, and despite headwinds in all but one of our KPIs, we exceeded last year's results. The one where we were down on last year's results was employee engagement. I can answer any questions you might have about that, but rest assured it's something we're looking at really closely. In terms of the indirect measures, the ones we don't control but are extremely interested in and which our activities contribute to, these are again almost all ahead of target and mostly ahead of results for the previous year. A couple of highlights on that screen for you to look at. I'm not going to go through them all, but the one that I want to draw to your attention is the $230 million of direct economic impact from the $23 million we received from shareholders. That is a figure that's audited, that's a methodology that we use that is accepted and validated by Wellington City Council. It's a really important figure. For the $23 million that you invest in us, we return to the businesses and to the economy of our city $230 million. Over the next couple of slides, we'll go into a little depth on some of the work that we've done on your behalf over the past year that's contributed to that result. So in the area of destination marketing, so Wellington City Council, exciting, contributes $5 million to support our work in tourism, attraction and marketing. And the letter of expectations is clear about the importance that you place on this area of work. Our work here includes a lot. So there's our website, which promotes Wellington and its attractions and its businesses to the world and to domestic visitors. Our marketing campaigns, our social media, our work with travel and tourism media and influencers, our work with the tourism and cruise ship industries, all of that sort of stuff. And again, there's too much to go through in detail, but just to draw your attention to a couple of data points. In just 12 months, our new website has had nearly 2 million visitors and has doubled the average visitor time on site, which means that people are coming, they're looking to find out about Wellington and the attractions it offers, and they're spending more time now than they did in the past before we refreshed our website. Our social media channels are growing, and these in our website have become Wellington's biggest billboard for the world to see. The little one that I want to draw your attention to is our Advent calendar, because it isn't just a bit of Christmas fun, even though it is definitely a bit of Christmas fun. It generated $660,000 in spending for local businesses last year. That's a 10-to-1 return on the $60,000 we invest in it. I'm going to hand to Heidi now to talk about two areas that she's very involved in, venues and events.
events perspective, the investment that we received for the city for the major events returned over $73 million of out-of-region spend into the city and region. Events are critical. They deliver economic impact plus vibrant energy to the city, and the major events fund from the city is crucial and critical to this. We operate in a very competitive market with other cities in New Zealand at the moment, and the post-COVID central government recovery fund for regional events finishes in 2025, so we have had the ability to layer some of that funding onto our major and regional events. This is finishing. We've had over 1 million people attending major and regional events, and whilst not in the last year, but our double-header mega weekend that we called it, when WOW in Q1 of this year and the All Blacks were playing on the same day, resulted in over 60,000 people attending events in a 3-day weekend over that period.
Alrighty, I'm going to talk to you briefly now about the work we do in our business innovation area. This is a small but powerful part of our business. It operates with funding roughly split between Wellington City Council and the Greater Wellington Regional Council. The Regional Economic Development Plan work is progressing really well, and it demonstrates the benefit of a regional approach. It allows us to leverage the work for additional funding so that we can increase the impact of the work we do, and it's also the work that's going to give us the best chance of accessing some of central government's kind of city deal type funding. This area of work also includes Screen Wellington, which you will all know about, as well as our small team, which is focused on events and services for the tech sector. So both quite small teams, but quite powerful areas of work. And again, I'm not going to go through all the statistics on the screen, but I hope you can see the energy and excitement that sits in this area and the vibrancy that it brings to our city and region. And then thinking about Māori economic development, again, this is an area where we've got a small team, but doing really meaningful work. In the year in review, we've been working with the Māori economic development ecosystem to find our place in realising the opportunity that lies with Māori businesses. There are a number of Māori business networks, and there's also Te Matarawa Māui, and we need to be really mindful of where does our investment help and support and add wind beneath the wings rather than duplicate or double up. So we've been really mindful and focused on that. In the year in review, we produced a procurement report that looks at opportunities for Māori businesses and better engagement with procurement systems. Having done this foundation work, we're now considering the best ways that we can continue to have impact in this area in collaboration with those partners. And we're really grateful for the support that they give us as we work that through. CHQ. It's a crucial piece of our puzzle, and you can see from this slide some of the amazing work that they've done in the past year. The work that CHQ does enhances Wellington's reputation as a place for innovation and technology. It receives $450,000 a year in core funding from Wellington NZ via our Greater Wellington Regional Council funding. So it's largely funded insofar as we fund it from Greater Wellington Regional Council, but I know this council has a great interest, so it's important to report it to you as well. It funds the rest of its work through gaining sponsorship and partners and commercial work. Now that commercial work's been pretty constrained in the last year because of the funding environment that we're in, and so they are facing significant funding pressure at the moment. Because of this, we recently took the opportunity, when a number of CHQ directors' terms were coming to an end, to regroup and bring CHQ closer underneath the Wellington NZ umbrella. We see this as a temporary measure to make sure that we're jointly operating in the most efficient way possible, and also to put the strength of the whole Wellington NZ organisation on board to figuring out how to resolve that funding challenge. How am I going for time? Because the clock's not showing.
Yeah, you've got 10 minutes left.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. Down a little bit. All right, so quickly to the quarterly update. So that's the end of my report on the year in review, and I'm now just going to spend a little bit of time on the quarter that's been. So you've got the report, and I know from the questions that we've received, so you've read it. So again, I'm not going to go through it in detail. Oh, kia ora. This is my board member. Welcome. Yeah. The key thing I want to note, and this is something that Heidi was just talking about, is the incredible power of events to enliven and connect and generate energy and vitality and also expenditure into our economy. In this quarter, our Screen Wellington team supported a week-long gaming festival in conjunction with the New Zealand Games Development Association. This industry represents a significant opportunity for Wellington. 21 of the country's gaming studios are home here in Wellington. It's an amazing little part of the sector to look at, and we're very thoughtful, and that Development Association festival was cool. WOW, you know all about. What you might not always think to remember is that Wellington NZ provides significant support to ensure that this asset remains in our city. We can't take that for granted, and we don't. This year the event sold more than 60,000 tickets, with more than 60% of those brought out of region, driving significant additional spending into our city. Heidi's mentioned the mega weekend, which was incredible in the quarter just past. And a small note about tech, which is an area that we've been focusing on. We recently launched a startup hub at Victoria University. Thank you, Mayor Whana, for coming to that. And this is continuing to thrive. Level 5 at Rutherford House is now fully occupied with 51 early stage tech sector teams, growing businesses here in Wellington with our support. And now to look ahead to what's coming up. We're going to finish with a couple of slides about what's ahead. And the key message here is that there's a lot coming up to be positive about, whether you're a Wellingtonian looking for an interesting life or a local business hoping for an injection of spending. In the area of screen, the largest screen production in New Zealand at the moment is happening here. Avatar is currently in studio at Stone Street. Domestic feature films also shooting here right now, and then we'll have a TV series being shot here when that feature film's finished. And that all means work for our industry, keeping them here, and spend associated with that activity around the region. In tech, we're focused on attracting venture capital firms to Wellington, so we're delighted to be bringing the premier startup event, Blackbird Sunrise Festival, to Wellington, and we're also planning our Capital Summit in the new year. In marketing, along with a range of activities, I want to call out a support local program that's going to be running through till Christmas, bolstered by our Advent calendar, which I mentioned before, and an expanded number of outlets and integration into our summer domestic travel campaign. And in events, that's all right, thank you. We've got a packed summer events coming up. Kicking off with the Barmy Army arriving for a test against the Black Caps in early December, and then there's a summer of cricket with the White Ferns and the Black Caps having a series of one-days at the Basin and Sky Stadium. Heaps going on in that area. And again, although we're not the teams and we're not the venues, we do a lot of work in supporting and attracting and making sure those things happen. Homegrown has shown its faith in Wellington by expanding with the addition of a Friday night, which is great news. The Art of Banksy will be in Tākina, and the next exhibition being announced later this month will lead into Christmas and summer, and our team's doing a lot of work to market and encourage attendance at those. There'll be more announcements later in the year, and we've got a strong focus on propositions to visit Wellington in the winter months, which our stakeholders tell us they most want us to ensure. So we're on track to deliver 28 to 30 major and regional events by June 2025. So that was a lot, and I'm delighted to have left time for questions, and we are here for them.
Thank you, Tracy and Heidi. We have a question from Deputy Mayor Foon.
Kia ora, thanks for bringing the good news. I just piecing together the tech opportunity and understanding, just reading that there's about 20 billion out there as a possibility to attract in private investment. Do you think we are lined up enough to attract that investment to Wellington with the strategy that we have?
We're certainly doing everything we can, and it's an area that we've been focusing on increasingly in the last, I'd say, 18 months.
Yeah.
And so the teams we've got working together, as I said, we've got the Capital Summit coming up, and Sunrise is part of that push as well. Can we do more? Always.
Yep.
But I feel a I know that Wellington NZ is much more focused on and directed towards that than it was in previous years.
Yeah, great, good news. One more question, if that's okay, Chair. Just regarding local, so good to see the heart or the summer to attraction campaign, but just in terms of local businesses, will that encapsulate something to attract, support local content?
Yeah.
And hospo retail, etc.
Yeah,
great.
And in the lead up to Christmas, we're doing more at the City Council's request. We're doing more in that area than we might have otherwise.
Yeah, great. Thank you,
Councillor Pennant.
Thank you for all your amazing work. Much appreciated. I'm not going to ask every CCO. The reliance on cruise ships, not awesome. And I just wonder if you are doing any thinking about that. Yeah. It is a tricky one given our geographical location.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously we're seeing a lot less cruise ships coming into the harbour this year than historically that we have seen. So our destination and marketing team are having to obviously adapt to that in terms of how we actually fill the void of those visitor numbers that are coming in. Obviously, we want our visitors to stay longer than just a day in the city, so they're working through how we can do that, stay longer and spend more whilst they're here. So they're most definitely focused on that. But I think there is some, obviously, with the natural attrition of less cruise boats coming into the harbour, then obviously their focus has had to change quickly.
Cool. And then the other question is homegrown, which is, I find deeply frustrating. Booze sponsorship plastered all over Waitangi Park and over the waterfront. Have you had any discussions with them? Because I just think it's totally inappropriate for an event mainly aimed at young people.
So Homegrown obviously has been a long-standing major event within the city and is expanding to 2 days next year from the 1 day with the addition of a Friday night event. They have commercial arrangements with their sponsors, including Jim Beam, obviously. They work with the liquor licensing authorities to ensure that they operate within the legislation provided. Is it ideal? Well, not for the city. Obviously, they may think something else, but we work with them to make sure that where as possible we can negate the effects of that.
Could you help them find another sponsor?
I'm sorry, Councillor. I'm actually going to limit us from now on to one question each because we're very time constrained. Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear about the investment in early startup and the capital that's available there, but I was wondering if you had taken a moment to think about the sort of constricting number of roles, particularly for people early in career. And I'm thinking about, the 100 engineers coming from Vic, or more broadly, the 800, 900 students across Wellington that are studying in the tech sector who can't get jobs here at the moment.
I think our work trying to grow the number of businesses that are based here and doing that kind of work is our best answer to that question. Yeah.
Councillor Free.
Thank you. Look, I had a random conversation with a businessman who noted that older people coming off those cruise ships are being dropped at the railway station, and it's often not really where the things that they want to see are. And his question was, would it be possible to bring them up somewhere more like the Michael Fowler Centre, where there's a bit more action and more things that they might want to do? Thought it was a missed opportunity because some of them are very elderly.
Councillor Free, can I answer that question? Because it's the actual council, it's council staff who work out where those destinations and drop-offs are. We would love a different route at the moment because of various transport projects around the city. Ultimately, for next season, the drop-off point we're aiming to have is outside Te Papa opposite Tākina.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, I didn't know whose responsibility it was.
That's all good, thank you.
And you had one quick last one, Councillor Pennant.
If you could help people find better sponsors. Alcohol's a major cause of harm in our communities.
There's nods. I'd like to thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. Thank you. I'd now like to welcome up. So yeah, we'll do one question at a time, just because several of you might have questions, so we do need to ration. But I'll put you back on the list. The cable car, David, the chair, and Tansy, the CEO. Welcome. And we'll put the clock on for you, so you've got 15 minutes, and if you want to leave time for questions. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, good to see you all. I'm just going to start because this will be my last presentation to you as chair of the cable car. It's been a few years. I'm really pleased to say there's a new chair who I think you're all aware of, who I know well and who will be an exceptionally good chair going forwards. It's been an interesting few years being chair of the cable car. Of course, we had COVID and no passengers, but it's also been a period where we've really got going with the seismic strengthening that's required. That's complicated work because of it's so surrounded by neighbours and both above and to the sides. But it's also been a period where I believe we've become far better integrated with the other council-controlled organisations and with the activities of events and such that goes on in the city. And that's been reflected in the enthusiasm the team have, led, of course, by Tansy, and their enthusiasm for work on the cable car and participation in all our big plans. So I'll pass over to Tansy to provide the report for you. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And actually, just to say a big thank you to David for his support of me over the last 2 years.
And thank you on behalf of the council as well. Thank you.
I'm glad he's sticking around till June. Okay, we'll jump straight into it. So just looking at passenger revenue targets for last year, what you're looking at there's a purple line that's FY22. That was just coming out of COVID. The blue line is what we did in FY23. We set a pretty solid target last year of 990,000 passengers, but we were pretty happy, of course, to reach that magic number of over 1 million passengers coming through, corresponding revenue on the side. So we're about 5% up in our passenger numbers, about 12% up in our revenue. And just how that's made up, so pretty similar to last year. Most of our business, I think there's another, sorry, I went a bit nuts with the animation, sorry. About 3/4 of the business is coming from casual passengers coming to see the cable car as a tourist attraction, and we still have about 1/4 that are using it as a commuter service, so all our lovely Kelvin locals. I'm just going to jump forward into Q1 and then I'll go back. So at the moment for Q1 we didn't quite meet our targets. I didn't want to put anything red up there, but I have. I usually try to stay within about 5%, but a few reasons. We set some pretty high targets. I was expecting a little bit more of a winter return of international visitors, which didn't really eventuate. Of course, last year we also had FIFA and we had more of the school holidays in September last year than this year. We're tracking pretty well. We usually do about 59,000 people in September. We did 59,000 this September. But yeah, a little bit behind, but it's about 10 sunny days for us really. Makes a real difference, the weather. On the 1st, I think, of July, I did a little price adjustment. I know we're going to be doing a differential pricing strategy this year, but we wanted to just tweak the price a little bit, and we also wanted to introduce a concession rate so that we put our students in there, community service card holders, and I also wanted to put on-peak gold card because the amount of times they rock up at like 3:30 and it's not free anymore. And you don't want to charge them full whack, so there's a concession price in there. We also had a really good AMS with a bogie change and a big crane, and lots of other collaborations with Doctor Who exhibition. We collaborated with Weta, we collaborated with New Zealand Chinese Language Week for a bit of fun. So just going into the highlights, I just think it deserved a page on its own. I know we celebrated in March, but again, we got to 1 million. We also had our best February on record, more visitors even than Te Papa, which was pretty great for us. So to go through the highlights, this is our one-page strategy. I'll just nip through under those key strategic focus areas. So the first one, all about kaitiakitanga, looking after our assets. This was last AMS, so we've completed the strengthening of our Lambton terminal. So the thing in the middle, those are brackets, steel brackets that are supporting all around the Lambton terminal, the double T concrete floors. So it was great to get that finished. We, of course, finished the bird decals. We're now the biggest bird-friendly building in the country, and we have not had a single bird strike since those were completed, so that's just wonderful. Carbon zero credit again. We also completed all the detailed seismic assessment of our 3 bridges, so we've got a really good view now of just where the risks and priorities are for strengthening those. And a lot of other work in the health and safety space, new cameras, replacing fences, that sort of thing. On the strategic focus area, so a lot of fun in the community. Of course, the dogs calendar, we raised quite a lot of money for the blind low vision, and we're doing that again this year. No one's dog in there that I know of around the table. And we've also done quite a lot of work on accessibility, so reviewing all of our web pages. There's now a full user journey for any sort of impairment that someone might have, and information on that. We've added audio scripts for the hearing impaired. We've also introduced free travel for caregivers, which was great. In this strategic focus area, this is basically about surprising and delighting our customers. So any opportunity we can get to get media, broadcast crews, sports teams, we're inviting them, and we're accepting all those invitations to the cable car. So FIFA was big for us. We just had the Today Show from Aussie in May, which was great. And then we're using all of that content to feed into our digital content and channel strategy, which we rolled out in FY24, and that's been going really well with some great results. In the partnership space, Faultline Ultra was really awesome. I think it was the first time in the world that a cable car had been included as part of any sort of marathon type run, so that was great. Also, Light Cycles was a real lifesaver for us in May and June. We stayed open later, we gave people a discount, and we had about 8,000 additional people through on that major event, so that was pretty awesome. Continued our traditional collaborations, Vic Uni Expos, lots of work with Experience Wellington, and also supporting Wellington City Council. So Te Wiki Kaumatua, we were doing winding room tours for Seniors Week, and we've also been working with the Te Kāinga program to give a 50% discount to residents. And my favourite one, my team. So we've been doing lots of training, sort of co-design workshops on customer experience, deaf culture workshops, also looking for the future whānau, so supporting Wellington City Council with careers fairs. And here we go with the animation again. That was probably my proudest moment last year, which was being shortlisted for the Best Places to Work in New Zealand awards, and that was based purely off staff filling in a survey, so not me banging away on some big awards form. It was just how they felt, so that was a really good moment. Challenges. Remind me to put these at the beginning. Why do I end on challenges? You should end on highlights. Anywho. Probably not achieving a couple of our measures was a bit of a challenge. I'd given you a heads up on the waste minimisation one. We were never going to achieve it. It was set at the wrong time and it was the wrong measure. So we've got a new one this year, which is percentage of waste diverted from landfill, and we're doing really well at that at the moment. What's that other one? Oh, the NPS score. So just missed out. It's worth noting that we benchmark against tourism attractions as opposed to public transport, which I think has a benchmark of about 35%. But we still keep on getting a couple of the bring back snappers, even though they can have cheaper trips on cable car products, but that does continue to get a couple of low scores. But we've got some plans for that. Insurance, of course, always tricky trying to get the right cover. I'm sure you know all about that. Snapper, as I said, we've got some plans for some more locals campaigns, trying to just get wider out into the Wellington region, because the people who are getting caught are, I don't know, maybe coming in from Miramar for the day and they haven't been on the cable car for 18 months and they don't realise that we don't have Snapper anymore. Revenue generation, always a challenge, of course. We operate in a pretty narrow corridor. There's only so much more we can add to our experience, but we do look at a lot of product development work. And of course, there is a big gap to fill coming on the next slide. Seismic resilience, of course, another big challenge. But yeah, for me at the moment, cruise is a challenge. You've heard of the drop that's coming this season, so it's quite hard to figure out who is and isn't a cruise passenger, although it's kind of obvious. And I can tell by reasonable amounts of number crunching that on a cruise ship day, we're taking about $10,000 to $15,000 more through the ticket box. So just at a broad sort of high level back of a fag packet, as they say, we're looking at $2 to $3, maybe $400,000 less revenue coming through the cable car because of the drop-off in crews. And of course, next season, we're looking at a minimum of 25% up to 35% drop again. So we'll be down to 50 ships next year. So I'm not sure if you saw there was a recent economic impact report last week which showed about $100 million of economic input into the Wellington region from cruise. So yeah, we're looking to lose that, which is a concern. I think that was it. Yeah, I didn't want to leave on a bad note, so there's a nice picture of a dog. Smiling face.
Do you have any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Chung.
Thank you very much for this, and I just wanted to ask you about the dog calendar. How are the sales of those going? Because you've actually made my dog Miss October.
Yes, they're going great actually. Yeah, the good thing is that we're doing it with all our partners as well. So they're for sale at Wellington Museum, online, at the Treehouse in Botanic Gardens this year as well. So they're doing very well.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Your dogs are sort of a nepo baby here. Councillor Pannett.
Thank you for all the work you're doing, and particularly on seismic resilience. So are you confident that you will be able to do that work and fund it? Because we just know the costs often are very high whenever we go into that space.
Yeah, well, we've got some money at the moment in the LTP for those outer years. We're pretty confident at the moment with the work that we're undertaking because of where we are with a lot of people don't have any work basically. So a quote that we got for slope strengthening a couple of years ago, which had doubled in price to $3 million, we think we could probably go out and get a more competitive quote for that now. So, but yeah, there's still construction costs to be estimated. So we've done the detailed design of the bridges. We know we're going to spend about $100,000 on geotech on the bridge piers and about $80,000 on strengthening the seating under the bridges. But what those costs will be all 5 or 6 years' time.
I think we have a much better idea of prioritisation now than we had 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. So that helps in that decision making and where to put the investment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And 2 engineers on the board.
Okay, I think we're out of questions. Thank you so much. And thanks again, David, for your service as chair. So I think we can get do another CCO before morning tea. So I'd like to welcome Experience Wellington, Jane and Diana. No mai, and while you're coming up, we're going to do a lot more of a formal recognition, but also want to thank you, Jane, and appreciate your service as chair. And over to you. We'll set the clock, so you have 15 minutes, including time for questions.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Jane Wrightson toka Wingwako o te tiamana o Whaiako Pōneke. It's a pleasure to be before you again to talk about Whaiako Pōneke, Experience Wellington, and all that we've achieved in the last 12 months. And as Councillor Matthews has referred to, this is my last appearance before you as chair, so you're lucky about that. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve the cultural and historical life of Pōneke through the storytelling opportunities that Whaiako Pōneke offers. We've had a number of ups and downs during my 8 years on the board, and there'll be a few more to come yet. But I can tell you that we've got an exceptionally competent team, executive and staff, who works hard to leverage our core funding in a very challenging environment and who works collectively to add value to Wellington in a way that helps us all. We're working hard to remove our projected deficit in 2025, with heavily crossed fingers that the number of cruise ships doesn't reduce in future, but as you know, this is an issue facing the city. And as you also know, the more we think about the experiences and the events that the city can hold, the better we can offset some of that drop. Also, as you know, we're custodians of your buildings and have faced significant challenges, as have you. Our team has navigated them very well, but Capitoli and City Gallery are looking forward to coming home to Tanako Civic Square in 2026. And I'd also like to take the time to thank you, councillors, for the work you do for our city. It's been rugged, and I hope this plane is sailing ahead, but we all love the city and we all want it to thrive. Nō reira. I'm now going to hand over to Diana to take you through the key points from last year and what lies ahead.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Diana Marsh toka ingoa. Thank you for this opportunity to present our annual plan, our annual result and our first quarter. Starting with our challenges, like Tansy, we thought it was better to start with our challenges, or unlike Tansy, but as she mentioned, I guess our biggest challenge last year was Te Whare Toi, the City Gallery. First having to reduce the hours because of building works, and then actually having to close earlier than expected and move our exhibitions to other sites. This actually ended up being extremely successful, so the outcome of what that was, we have had very high visitation, but it demanded a lot of our team. It demanded our team to work really quickly to move these exhibitions in a matter of months, and I'd just like to acknowledge the arts our arts partners throughout the city, and it shows the strong relationships that exist and how we were able to do that. So while it was challenging, it also ended up being managed really well by the team, and we're going to continue to exhibit throughout next year at the National Library. So that's the good news, and we're really looking forward to returning to Tanako in 2026. Our fundraising environment is challenging, as it is for everybody, and many trusts are now oversubscribed, and trusts are moving their focus away from arts and culture and they're moving it to social need. And of course that's completely understandable, but it's not really being replaced with other opportunities. So that is an area that we all in the sector have to work on, and we're all very well aware of it. It's affecting everybody. Education outside the classroom has also been challenging in that we have noticed our learning numbers have dropped and declined, and we're doing all that we can to mitigate that, but this again is a trend seen by other organisations. So we're trying to put in other plans, looking at different ways of trying to connect with younger people in the classroom, maybe going into the classrooms rather than just having them come to our sites, and combining that with classroom and site visits. And we're certainly having to consider that for City Gallery now that we've actually had to move out of our classroom and have sort of mobile, flexible classrooms, which is challenging given all the materials that we have. And I guess the only other issue is the ongoing uncertainty of bond store, which I know you're all really well aware of, and I appreciate all the time that you've taken to discuss this with our organisation and consider it. So moving on to the positive for the year, we exceeded our visitor numbers significantly, projected 400,000 and we more than 600,000. The Barbie collection was very successful, as I'm sure you're all well aware, and that also gave us an opportunity to leverage other areas such as our shop revenue and our donations and our merchandise. So the team capitalised on that really well. Our retail has been amazing, and we projected $1 million, or budgeted $1 million in retail sales, and despite a challenging environment achieved 1.3 million. So that's congratulations to a fantastic retail team that we have. We have an excellent commercial team who are constantly striving for new ways to achieve things. So for example, with the cruise ships down, the numbers down, they're now looking at ways we can leverage off our other customers by including tours and ticket prices and all sorts of other ways that we can mitigate the challenges that we have. Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon was really successful. It just about sold out in the whole season, and we only wish we could extend it, but the rights were only available for 1 year. And finally, we were renamed Whiako Pōneke, Experience Wellington, with new branding to match that. And we had a surplus in the year of over 400,000. So that was last year, while we had many challenges, was successful. And just moving on very quickly to quarter one, our visitors are going very well. Our city galleries had really great visitation across the 3 sites that we're on. We are in surplus ahead of projections for our quarterly outcome. And while this wasn't in the first quarter, I just want to share with you, we introduced admissions for international visitors to the Wellington Museum. And so far in October, we received over $12,000 in revenue, and we had over 800 visitors. We did have some people walk away, but and that was about over 200, but we suspect it may not have just been about admission charges. It may have been for other reasons. So we're just refining how we measure that a bit more closely. And again, the big issue for us is the bond store. I just want to acknowledge you all and thank you all for your support and the meetings that I've had with you and the support that you provide. I also just want to acknowledge Jane, who's been a fantastic chair, and I'm sad to see her go. She's been wonderfully supportive and made a significant difference to this organisation. So thank you. And finally, the staff of Wellington City Council, Jamie and Anna and Yeston and all the others that we're involved with. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I do have some questions. Councillor Pennant.
Thank you very much for putting through your perspective on the bond store. So I've read that. I'm just wondering, do you have any idea about how much a new building would cost compared to the remediation? It would be large numbers, obviously.
We don't know the exact number, and I don't think it's helpful to bandy them around, but quite possibly a new building may be cheaper than remediation, but that's massive business cases that the council officers will have to do.
So your view...
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Given the success of moving the collections which City Gallery doesn't have a permanent collection, but having other sites, has the board given any consideration to potentially the old City Library, which is now City Gallery, being actually housing the permanent collection for the museum?
Not really. The City Gallery building has been adapted to be a gallery. I'm not sure that it would even fit the collection, let alone be the right place. But again, all these things, of course, are being actively debated at the moment. The board, I suspect, won't have a strong view one way or the other until we see business cases and, of course, the costings around that. But at this point, I think a purpose-built, if you're thinking about the bond store, for instance, not being able to be occupied, probably a purpose-built building would be better than trying to use City Gallery per se. Not sure, don't know. This is the debate, right?
Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Ngā mihi, Jane and Diana. I'm really curious to hear about the new marketing that's going on, in particular directed towards Wellingtonians. I'm noticing a lot on my feed about Paddy the Wanderer and historical events of Wellington. So I just wanted to hear more about how that's gone.
It's going very well, but I haven't seen the measures in for it yet. Paddy the Wanderer is a new item that we have. It's a toy that we've developed and we're marketing just to try and get a connection to our museum through all our sites. So we're trying a lot of different techniques, but I think it's showing in the retail sales. So I think that's how you can measure it.
And we have pinched the idea of a dog, let's face it.
Yeah.
There's a theme developing here. Councillor Young.
Hi, thank you for all that information. Just wondered if you could tell me what is the future for the Nan Street Cottage?
We're currently working on putting together new content for the visitor centre for the exhibition that reflects a more fulsome story of Wellington and the cottage, including mana whenua stories. It used to be a trading place between iwi and locals back in the day, and we want to make that a more full explanation and update and refresh. So that's on the plan for this and next financial years.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Thank you very much. With the success of charging international visitors to these venues, what's your view on whether it's actually set at the right price, or are people saying that when they come in and they don't enter, do they actually give you a feedback on that it's too high, or is there any feedback on that?
I haven't received direct feedback on that, but I can follow that up and present
thank you.
it next time.
Councillor Pennant, do you have another one? All right. Councillor Rogers.
Just on the Nan Street Cottage, with the investment and sort of the future plan for it, do you foresee an uplift in visitors to the centre?
We fully anticipate that, and we're always also looking at commercialisation opportunities, which include things like in the gardens, weddings in the garden, and all sorts of other ways of making product. We have to get the cottage in order, and we really appreciate the work that the council has done so rapidly on the visitor centre to actually make it look presentable, which was painting it and also putting heaters in because it was actually very cold. So we're actually in the process of doing that. We're trying to fix the garden to make it appropriate to the era, and then we're looking at commercial products as a result of that, which we'll sell throughout all our sites.
All right, that's the end of the question. What, quick one, Councillor Free?
Yeah, how's the observatory going, this space, what do you call it?
Space.
Yes. How's that going?
very well. We've got very high visitor numbers, and we get many people to our public programs there that sell very well and very heavily. And the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon last year is a really good example of its success.
Plus the refurb. Looks great now.
It does. It looks fantastic.
Right, ngā mihi korua. We look forward to celebrating your contributions at greater length over lunch, Jane, and we will now break for morning tea. We will take 15 minutes, so we will come back at 10 to. Thank you. to our friends from the zoo. So we have apologies from Karen. I believe that my favourite acronym ever. She's at the WAZA.
WAZA.
WAZA. I'll think of it as WAZA. Welcome, Jamie and Nina and Chris, and over to you. We'll set the clock for 15 minutes.
Ka pai, o tēnā rā koutou, tēnei mātou o te nuku ao, tūro o te whanganui ātare mihi nei ki a koutou, kei ngā mema kaunihi rei tēnei ata. So morning everyone. It's a privilege to join you this morning. First and foremost, I just want to acknowledge formally Craig Ellison. I have the privilege of replacing Craig. He departed in January this year, served 9 years, 8 of which were chair of the organisation. And so, yeah, just want to acknowledge Craig's contribution to the organisation during his tenure. And we're well placed as we move forward into the future. And so I thought I'd just make some introductory comments on the year that has been. I think being sort of 8 months in the role, I think one of the outstanding aspects of the zoo is we have a capable, committed, passionate team from the board down to the various operational staff, and gives us opportunities to bring people like Chris to brief you today, which really sort of speaks to the depth of talent that we have within the organisation. But really just a couple of highlights. One is we had the sort of best visitation for the year ever. So 17,000 above the previous year, which is fantastic. But with increased visitation, of course, we, like many other CCOs and organisations and entities throughout the country, continue to be challenged by cost increases, particularly around electricity, water, which you have something to do with, but also food costs and the like. And so, you know, we're not immune to some of those challenges like yourself. One of the key pieces of work which is outlined in the annual report for the year is our master plan. And really the master plan, which I want to touch on briefly, is really building on the 20 years of work that has been undertaken by the zoo to position the zoo as a progressive zoo and actually world leading. And I think it's something that you as a council can celebrate and the broader Wellington community, because I think the stewardship of your assets and the way in which the trust has positioned the zoo, not only nationally but globally, is something that we should celebrate. And really when you think about the master plan, it is ensuring that we continue to be ambitious, we continue to think about those things that require us to be at the right end of health and safety for our staff, to ensure that animal welfare is at the forefront, but importantly ensuring that we can maintain sort of positive visitor experience, and also think about where we invest to continue to generate revenue opportunities. And I think the most recent of those investments was the snow leopards. Probably took a bit longer than everyone would have liked, but I know that we're starting to see the value of that investment in terms of visitation, attractions, and sort of recently with the close encounters, which are performing really well at the moment. And so we'll just get through, we'll go through our presentation. And Nina's here, so Nina's the sort of chair of our audit and risk, and we've got Chris. We just thought we better bring a few of us, given we didn't have Karen. So you're familiar with our strategy, and we're just going to go through each of the component parts of our strategy, and I'll invite sort of Chris and Nina to chip in where required. But I think by and large the organisation is in a really positive sort of place. In addition to the record visitation, what we do have is sort of retail revenue was substantially higher than budget, which again is fantastic. And then really just acknowledgements to the team, where you see a number of awards and staff that have taken up important positions within the broader sector. When we look at our role, you'll see in our annual report, in terms of our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, we achieved 19 of the 22 that we'd set. And we've got a number of initiatives that are underway, one of which was the fish waste, which again is successful. But all of these things really speak to what we're looking to do to be that progressive zoo and to be a bit of a shining light in the sector. And again, just maintaining the relationships and the partnerships that we have across the board, which are fundamental to us sort of moving forward into the future. I'm going to hand over to Chris, and he can talk to some of the highlights around our animals.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Obviously, the snow leopard's been a great success, but we've also been very fortunate to have Nia, our baby giraffe, born in November. So just prior to the busy Christmas holidays, so she definitely helped contribute to that increase in visitor numbers. We've opened a new lace monarch habitat in a previously disused part of the zoo. So again, like really making the asset work for the animals and for the visitors, and creating new experiences to encourage people to keep coming back. We've continued some of the work with artificial intelligence. We did try and get a collar on one of our snow leopards to do some AI research and behavioural research, but didn't quite fit. And then we tried it with the tigers, and then she decided to show it off. So we're revisiting that project, but it's the reason why people say never to work with children and animals. Yeah. Obviously, continuing the ZA animal welfare accreditation is incredibly important to us to make sure that we're maintaining that, and our work with our vulnerable and endangered species as well.
Fantastic. Nina can never go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. We're moving on to
purpose.
The next one. Okay, so the purpose, yes. So we have hosted the satellite event for the inaugural World Species Congress. 30 New Zealand organisations making 50 pledges of their choice. So that's showing the work that we're doing to collaborate internationally as well as within New Zealand. The conservation program set up for the nationally endangered Whittaker skinks, and I know some of the councillors joined us at that last month. We had a very busy month at the zoo, and it's an amazing experience to be able to see some of these animals that are endangered, especially when we're working now with partners close at hand within the Wellington region to be able to support the ongoing success of those breeding programs to be able to reintroduce the skinks in future years is the intent. We've renewed the Massey University program with zoo, animals and wildlife health with the residents' vets, and the conservation funding staff grants award to conservation partners has been a big success. 14,395 awarded to local conservation grant recipients, which has been an interesting progression for the zoo to be able to support those local conservation awards. You want to move on?
Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Jamie touched on, our community is the most important part of the zoo. It kind of keeps us going and is a core value for us. So we're really wanting to continue our support for diversity within the zoo. So being awarded the 2 Rainbow Tick Excellence Awards was an amazing achievement for the team, and it really highlights the support we want to give to zoo staff and those who are coming to the zoo to make it a more inclusive place to visit. 7,000 people enjoying Close Encounters is probably our busiest Close Encounters program ever, and also kind of contributes towards that revenue generation that we've been speaking about. Gladly, the Snow Leopard project won 2 gold awards, both in construction and in the NZIA Wellington Architecture Awards as well. And then probably most importantly, we were gifted a new name for the zoo. So Te Nuku-a-Tōrōa Te Whanganui-a-Tara Wellington, or Te Nuku-a Wellington Zoo. And we're still working on the next phase of that project, our Kanoa Hikatea project, and what that looks like for the staff's cultural competency program, and then how people who come into the zoo might experience that as well.
Great. So now quarter one unfortunately didn't sort of get off to the start we would have liked. So July, was sort of wet. So during that school holiday period, which meant that we didn't get the level of visitation that we had hoped. But what on the sort of upside is the Snow Leopard Close Encounters was launched, and so we're looking forward to seeing how that goes. And we had a Facebook campaign, I don't know if any of you sort of participated in it, which had quite a lot of demand for a free It was a free close encounter, yeah. So we had over 18,000 sort of people sort of engage in that. I think the other, the key thing in terms of welcoming some new animals to the zoo, which is always exciting, not only for the staff but also for the region. I don't know if you know, but in terms of the current sort of visitation mix, about 60% of those that visit the zoo are Wellingtonians. Which is really fantastic, and one of the key objectives when we think about learning and opportunities for education is how we ensure that the zoo is accessible to a lot of our tamariki and children to get that experience at the zoo as well. We've talked about the sort of local conservation grants, and then we've internally revised our sort of conservation strategy. And one of the interesting things being a newbie to the zoo board is actually understanding the scope and the reach that we have in terms of our contribution to broader conservation initiatives and some of the partnerships. So, our local partnership with Capital Kiwi, the Whittaker Skinks. So we've got our partnership with Ngāti Tō. So we've got some of the Ngāti Tō sort of rangers sort of working in that project. And then, of course, we have some relationships more abroad. So that's sort of quarter one. And we've got to state the challenges because we are challenged in terms of those utility costs as we'd sort of talked about. And of course, wage costs and those sorts of things. So how do we ensure that we're an organisation that is able to retain staff and to be able to attract quality staff? I think, we recognise too, we've got a piece of work underway at the moment around our pricing strategy. But the impact that our households have in terms of cost of living and how that will affect visitation numbers. The other thing, within central government, so our venues and conferencing has reduced. Again, some of those cuts that have happened. But one of the key things that we're really focused on is just thinking about our renewals program and the importance of that in terms of understanding even yourselves in terms of your objectives around renewals for CCOs, but also sort of early savings. And we've got, over time, we'll be able to have those discussions with council officers around what that looks like going forward. I saw a Stuff article which mentioned the master plan, so that might be something we have a bit of a conversation about too. But I think from a trust standpoint, we're really open about that. It's your asset, and we're the stewards of your asset and the community's asset at the zoo, and so we want to work proactively to ensure that we do maintain the asset. And then just sort of looking forward, as Chris touched on, the rollout of our Te Nukuao Te Ao Māori strategy, engaging with our whānau internally, and then the otter habitat before Christmas. Looking forward to that, and then the sort of launch of Animals of Aotearoa. So,
all right, so we have a question from Councillor Abdu.
Thank you, Whānau. And my quick question would be, without getting much into the politics of it about the staff coverage, what do you think of the master plan, not having that master plan, what it means for the zoo and going forward?
Well, I think the challenge with not having, so for the first 10 years, I think it's in the order of about 16 million in the long-term plan. It's really the ability to be able to maintain the asset, and so to ensure that we, maintain the assets so that we're able to keep staff safe, that animal welfare, again, is where it should be, and just continuing to invest to ensure that the zoo is attractive in terms of visitor experience, and then looking at where those opportunities are to invest to be able to sort of generate sort of revenue going forward. One of the challenges, and I'll get Chris to sort of touch on it, is some of our infrastructure is getting to a point where it's not about sort of R&M. It's actually about sort of potential replacement or reconfiguration, and you might be able to touch on the lion den. And
Yeah. So my official title, other than Acting Chief Executive, is Director of Safety, Assets and Sustainability. So I've got a key role in looking after the asset on behalf of the council. While the zoo master plan ostensibly looks like it could potentially be like a whole bunch of upgrades and basically brand new infrastructure. The key thing to understand is a lot of those projects are actually replacing what will be in another 5 to 10 years completely defunct assets. So the first project of the master plan is to redo the lion habitat. When that by year 5 of the LTP, that habitat will be 40 years old. A couple of years ago, we had to spend $100,000 just replacing the containment fence, and if we don't get funding for the master plan, that will mean that a larger proportion of the renewals budget that we do have will have to be diverted back into basically just patching and repairing what is an asset that really needs to be pulled down and starting it again. I know in the LTP, for the first 5 years, year 5 and 6, there's $1 million set aside. So in terms of cutting the master plan from the LTP discussions, it doesn't really align with the stated descriptions about what the objectives are for the revised LTP process. It's not early savings, and it will be removing.
Sorry, Chris, we are out of time, and I just want to reassure you that we are at the beginning of a process with regards to the LTP amendment. Thank you, team. We really appreciate you coming in. Now I would like to welcome Danielle. Just Danielle, not just. No, my Danielle, to speak on behalf of Zealandia.
Kia ora. You hear me okay? You have to push some button. I think I'm right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me. I believe there's a clicker. Yep. So Russell Spratt sends his apologies. He's unwell today. So yes, you just get me, just me. From a governance perspective, looking back over the last year, we have a phenomenal board. Philip Meyer left us in great stead at the end of December, and now, of course, Russell Spratt has taken over, and we have a well-functioning, well-performing board and governance at the moment. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to present and give some really good news about our last financial year. So our impact in numbers, that first little man is not holding a gun, he's holding binoculars. Someone pointed that out to me this morning. Binoculars for bird watching, of course. So if you look at those numbers, especially those wee arrows, we've had a massive increase in visitors. We've had 22% increase in revenue. We've achieved a 921k surplus before depreciation and 636 after. So this is well ahead of our budget. We have a very healthy balance sheet. We've seen 25% growth in our tours. And in a nutshell, for every dollar that the council contributes, we make at least another 4. So this is a very good return on investment, I would say. We've managed to achieve across all our KPIs, hit our targets, except for our memberships. The reason behind that is we've migrated to a brand new, beautiful CRM, and through that process we had some renewal issues. They're all solved now, and our numbers are tracking up again. So we have over 15,500 members at the moment. Now, our organisation, those numbers look great, but what that means is we've managed to rebuild our balance sheet. We've got 3 months of operating capital in reserves. That means that should things go awry or should we need to do something urgently, we can do that. We are in a healthy financial position. Healthy, not wealthy. So our impact and stories. So what a year. You know, we took out that top tourism award for the country, recognising 25 years of regenerative tourism. And I think that it's such a great marketing tool, and I think that underpins a lot of our other successes as well. But you'll also be aware, of course, that the Lee Q Young Award, Zealandia was a big contributor to that special mention for Wellington. So we are recognised on the international stage. Now, stories about cool, slimy fish. You know, for all our work, we always start with the conservation. That 500-year vision of restoration is our most important thing. This year, we're not afraid to do things a second time. So I talked to you about the toi last year. So this little fish completely missing from the upper reaches of the Kaiwharawhara catchment. We're reintroducing them over 3 years. So we've done another translocation, and what doing something a second time means is that we can take a different tack, or we can grow it and we can grow its impact. So for us, this year has been about growing the presence of Mātauranga Māori within that program of work. So this was a neat little project. You can see these great folks holding bundles of bracken fern. So this is whakaweku. So effectively what that provides, if you sink it into the lake or into the stream, is little hiding places for the wee fish. So this effectively reduces stress on the fish when we translocate them and improves the effectiveness and the chance of survival. So by bringing Mātauranga Māori and Western science together, we can get these incredible outcomes. And that's just a tiny little example of where that's happened. Another neat project is we never waste an opportunity to innovate. So you can see a little kaka there poking his head out of that little pine there. So this is a nest box carved for kaka into an old pine tree. Now, as you know, over time we're going to need to remove those pines, but we recognise that the whenua grew these pines, and we're engaging and using them to regenerate that forest as well. So we're bringing in techniques from overseas, from Sweden, from Switzerland, that haven't been tried in New Zealand to make these pines act older than they are and provide a way to regenerate the populations of birds and regenerate the forest. So pretty neat story there. For projects like this, we have international collaborators, and national collaborators, and research underpins that sort of work. Very good. So, bequests. We were founded 25 years ago, and I think we're seeing the impact of this place. People are seeing Zealandia as a place for a brighter future, and we're noticing that in the gifts that they are leaving us. So we received around $500,000 of bequests in the last financial year. And if you look at our Q1 report, we had a target of above 200K of donations, and we've gone past 500K, and that is mostly made up of bequests. So you can see there that boardwalk. That's a very special boardwalk from the estate of John Nankervis. Some of you may know of him, a fabulous Wellingtonian. But that boardwalk was put in so that we could release that little frog there, the Moor Island frog, Pepe Katoa, into the wild. This is the first population since colonisation that this frog has managed to have in the wild on mainland New Zealand. Endangered species. So that bequest enabled that to happen. It means that our people don't accidentally stand on it, in short. But we can't do these projects without that funding, and that's a significant impact that people have as they pass on. So, looking forward, a really big focus for us now is our predator exclusion fence. So it's 25 years old. I've, made the depreciation schedule about 30 years. That's how long we think it has in it. So we're starting to plan for its renewal. Now, as you all know, that in the last version of the long-term plan, there was $1 million per year allocated to support the renewal of the fence from 2029 to 2031. And what we've started now is preparations to help us make the most of that funding. So we've been fundraising. So again, we've got a significant contribution from an estate, and GHD, a big engineering firm, is helping us with pro bono and at-cost work to redevelop the design of this fence to both improve conservation outcomes even further, but also to improve maintenance and longevity into the future. So this is really important, developing the next blueprint, Zealandia Fence 2.0, that will help us plan effectively and make really good use of that resource in the future. So please leave that support in there. No, it really is enabling, and that's, I think, my main message to you all as councillors, is City Council is an enabler of remarkable access, not just in revenue, but of conservation impact here. A big piece of work for us at the moment is corporate memberships. As we know, we're seeing a change in international tourism and cruise. We are anchored here in the Wellington community, and corporate memberships is a big part of our future. The product is in the last stages of development. At the moment, it's focused on on well-being of people's employees, and it's got great interest, very significant interest. This product is being made possible because of that investment in our CRM. So investment in infrastructure really supports growth, the exploration of new products, and development of new revenue streams. And for me, as an environmental advocate, I think that this product is going to be a major game changer for New Zealand as well. I see this as a mechanism through which we can promote nature-positive business. Reporting about nature impacts in annual reports. We can support that through our corporate members. So I'm pretty excited about that one. Looking forward again, conservation aspirations, kiwi pukapuku. We've got a lot of them. The little spotted kiwi, the little guy that can't survive that well in an environment where there are predators around. So there's a what next for some of those birds. Where are they going to go? And I think that's a watch the space. This will be a really big coming of age for Zealandia. It will be our first active export, other than the kaka, which sort of fly over the fence themselves. But it really does show the impact that this place has had and the contribution to national conservation outcomes. Cool. Right, last week we opened Te Whiringa Tangata, Tanglewood House. Laurie was there. Yeah. We are so proud to have this building. It replaces a very decrepit and derelict building that helped us get off the ground. But this is really incredible, healthy, productive workspace that is going to promote collaboration for conservation across Wellington. We have a number of hot desks. If any of you guys want to drop in and spend some time on the edges of the sanctuary, working alone, we're really interested in just supporting the city's aspirations here. So it's a beautiful building, perfect for us. Right, so I've done a little bit of the Q1 report, but Q1 is going really strong. We've hit all our targets. As I mentioned, we've exceeded our donations target for the year already. We are just going from strength to strength right now. The corporate memberships is a big focus, massive potential, and that will provide us that local sustenance into the future. Just a note, our AGM, 3rd of December, after work, it's going to be held at Victoria University of Wellington. We have a special guest, Helen Clark, will be interviewed by Mark Sainsbury. So a bit of a different one. Helen Clark is our patron, has been for many years, so we're very lucky to have her international perspective on the environment. But yeah, I recommend you all have a read. It'll make you proud. You're part of something incredible, and thank you very much for your support.
We have a question from Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Danielle. You talked about replacing the fence. Have there been any new technologies in fence protection or fence materials in the last 25 years? Like, are you changing the materials that you're using?
That's a great question, Ray. We had the first predator exclusion fence. We're the first to have to replace it. So the phase that we're entering in now is a redesign based on our 25 years of knowledge and expertise that will actually be the exemplar for other sanctuaries across New Zealand. So yes, so this is a lot of new discovery stuff happening, bringing in expertise from across New Zealand, some international expertise on how we make that even better. So yeah, we're leading the way.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, I've long asked questions about the fence because it's so important. How are you monitoring that it's actually remaining in adequate condition?
Good question. So we have a team We have a couple of people who are fully dedicated to looking after the fence, and we carried out a fence audit a couple of years ago, so we know where our weak points are, and we go through a process of maintaining those. That's part of our regular BAU. We also have a phenomenal pool of volunteers. It's being checked properly at least a couple of times a week, actually, so people are walking around constantly monitoring. So yeah, we have a well-oiled machine as to how we keep an eye on that, and yeah, this next phase will just help us plan the replacement or repair for the future.
Councillor O'Neill.
Ngā mihi. I just had a question around pine tree veterinarisation. That's a relatively new way of working with pine trees. I know we've got a lot on council land that we own. What's that process like, or do you think this is something that could be rolled out across the town belt of Wellington?
Yes, we reckon that there's opportunity here for not just Wellington, but actually the whole of New Zealand. As we know, pine trees are a massive interest and issue across New Zealand. I'm an ecologist, so you get the stories, but I'm really interested particularly in the opportunities for providing it's healthy homes for our money. So by carving out those nest boxes, we often provide nest boxes made out of timber, but the nest boxes carved out of pines, the temperature fluctuations are low, they're drier. They're not as damp, they don't have to be cleaned out as often, the birds seem to manage it themselves. So I think that's our biggest opportunity, is the next step of promoting the bird populations across New Zealand. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's us out of questions. Thank you so much, Danielle. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Healthy, not wealthy.
Yeah, a few good lines there so we can put on repeat. No mai, Rachel, our chair, and Warwick, our CEO from Sky Stadium. Welcome. And we'll reset the clock for you. We'll put your prezzo up.
Can't have the rest of Danielle's time.
Yeah, you get the extra 20 seconds, Rachel.
O tēnā rā tātou. Very nice to be here. I always feel we're a bit sad when we turn up. We have no dogs, no skinks. We have, cruise ships are not really our thing. But we do have good news for you, which is good. So, and some of you attended our AGM a couple of weeks ago, so thank you for dialing in for that. We, of course, have a bit of a rerun for you today. Like everyone else, it has been a big year. I actually said to Warwick down the back, I'd love to get up and say we've got loads of money, no problems, everything is good. But of course, I will leave that part to Warwick actually. But in a nutshell, as you'll see on the screen here, a range of highlights over the last year. We had, perhaps we'll move on to the next one. Thank you. 49 major event days in the last year, over 500,000 fans, which was up on the prior year, which was great. We had a surplus. It wouldn't have escaped anyone's notice that we had FIFA Women's World Cup, which was, of course, the phenomenon that came to the country, and we were really proud to be able to host so many games here. I think we were, of all of the stadiums, the busiest stadium back to back, and also were awarded in the context of FIFA for being such a great host and such a great venue. So we were very, very proud of that, and also pleased with the team. It was, if there was an extra mile to be taken, the team took about 100 of them. So that was a great moment in the stadium's history and also the city's history. The event pipeline is strong, and I'll come back to that in a minute, because the other major change that we had over the course of the last year is that we invited in a new CEO in Warwick. He was obviously well known to all of you, but took on the reins as CEO. We have also, with that, a new strategy, and Warwick will touch on that briefly at a high level, and we're very, very happy to come and share that with you in depth at any point that does suit. I know your agendas are always very, very packed, but we'll touch on that briefly as we come to it. But I just would say from the outset, thank you, as everyone has said today, for your support. There are a lot of headwinds for everyone at this time. We know how fortunate we are both to have your investment of attention and then also support, so thank you for that.
Oh, kia ora koutou. I'm just looking at the financial performance. This is made up of event day revenues of around 12 million, box membership sponsors and sundry income of around 7 million, and total revenue, including grants, of 21.3 million. Our operating expenses were 13.5 million, so we had an operating surplus before depreciation of 7.8, and our total surplus after depreciation of $3.7 million. As Rachel touched on, a lot of our key targets were achieved this year off the back of FIFA Women's World Cup. I mean, we had 9 matches in 22 days with 230,000 people coming through Sky Stadium, many of those coming from out of town. 7 matches in just 13 days. And we were the first venue in the world to have 7 standalone pool matches in either a men's or women's World Cup. It was a culmination of about 4 years planning, and it was a real challenge for the team, as it was for other teams around the city. But I'd just like to take the opportunity to recognise the efforts of the team. We were awarded the NZEA Venue of the Year off the back of our work for that, a recent award. So it's good recognition of what was a superb effort by the team. I will just touch on another couple of highlights. I know we don't have a lot of time. The Foo Fighters concert in January once again showed Sky Stadium has been a great venue for concerts. I think it went off without a hitch. We had almost 3 hours of the Foo Fighters playing. Operationally really smooth. The integration with public transport, again, a real key for us, and a real benefit to the city, bringing events such as that into town. We held our first international cricket match for 2 years, again highlighting the Sky Stadium as a good option as an international cricket venue. We had just over 18,000 people in the stadium, and the fact that we had 400 runs scored and it went down to the last ball shows that we can provide quality pitches at Sky Stadium, just as we do at the Basin Reserve with our turf team providing turf management services to the Basin Reserve Trust. Football was a big year for football in Wellington the last financial year, and off the back of FIFA, the Wellington Phoenix had a really successful season, obviously, culminating in that semi-final played here, which unfortunately didn't go quite the right way, but having around 33,000 people in what really was a spectacular atmosphere. And I think the moment that they scored that goal just beside full time to put it into extra time, probably one of the more unique experiences I've had in a New Zealand sporting environment. And we saw that again last week with the new derby with Auckland AFC joining the A-League. And again, I think that probably shows what is possible for the future in terms of the Phoenix. The Phoenix's run into that semi-final was based on not being beaten at Sky Stadium. I think it was 7 wins and 1 draw out of their 8 matches. And we also hosted a couple of Phoenix women's matches, which was a highlight for us. I think, again, just showing our turf team and the international quality they produce, both at the stadium and at the Basin. They were voted the best turf by the Professional Players Association of Australia, the best turf in the A-League last season, which, again, good recognition for the team. Off the back of the success of the Phoenix, our other home team, the Hurricanes, had their most successful season in a number of years, and we hosted our first semi-final in Super Rugby at Sky Stadium, the first since 2016, which was a real highlight. Again, not quite getting there in the semi-final, which seemed to be a bit of a theme of last financial year. It's good that the Lions fixed that this financial year, but great to see the Hurricanes supporters get out for that semi-final against the Chiefs. Exhibitions and community events were an important part of last year and will continue to be an important part of our business. We hosted a total of 10 exhibition days with over 34,000 people coming through the doors. And obviously that just enhances our reputation and shows that it is a multi-purpose venue. It's obviously built as a sports venue but can be used for a variety of things, both exhibitions and business events. The photo here is of Beervana. Beervana was held 1 week after FIFA Women's World Cup, which was quite a turnaround given the overlay and the effort that was put into decamping FIFA out of our stadium. But again, a really successful event. As Rachel touched on, both in our previous strategy, but certainly going forward, we want to make the asset available for the wider community and host more community events. And this year we held both Eid festivals, which again was really, really successful. And just this week we've actually come to an agreement with the Cancer Society to hold Relay for Life at the stadium in April next year. So really looking forward to that. Jamie, I don't think we need to report on Q1, but I will. Q1 this year started really strongly with the 2 All Black tests. Obviously, we didn't have All Blacks last year due to it being a Rugby World Cup year and the clashes with FIFA. Again, I think that weekend where there was the Bledisloe Cup, there was a lot of other things going on in the city's venues, really highlighted the value of events to the city, both in terms of economic benefit for businesses in the CBD, but just the social benefit. There was a real buzz around town and people had a real pep in their step. I think, again, a real strong exhibition season in Q1 with Beervana, the food show and the home show. and just outside of Q1, but not far. We've held 5 Wellington Lions matches, including their playoffs and that win that they had in the final, which was great. And we continue to seek more content, both for this year, but now for next year as well. Just want to touch on our capital works program this year. There's a significant works program that's going into place. Our screen replacement is halfway through, so we have replaced the screen at the southern end. If anyone has been there at the stadium the last couple of events, there is a noticeable difference between the quality of screen at the southern end and the northern end. And the northern end will be replaced over the next 2 to 3 weeks during the school exams that have been held at the stadium. The LED lighting replacement, we have entered a contract to get that underway. That will take place over the next 9 to 12 months, where we will replace all the light fixtures in the stadium, about 6,000 of them with LED. And our seismic resilient project, which is obviously the big one. The scoping works for that under a heads of agreement with Naylor Love is getting completed this week. And we're looking to enter our final agreement with them next week for those works to start in proper. Obviously, really important for the stadium in terms of resilience in the case of a major earthquake. Not only resilience in terms of the building being there and being functional, but also life safety, which is really important. And I'd just like to acknowledge the councils, both Wellington City Council and Greater Wellington Regional Council's grants that are going to make that possible. As Rachel touched on, we have a refreshed strategic framework, and I guess our vision is to be New Zealand's best loved stadium. And that's going to be off the back of providing exceptional customer experiences. For us, there is a new stadium being built in Christchurch. We are 25 years old next year, but the experience you can have in Sky Stadium and in the city and the region, and a part of that is actually having it in a CBD location, the transport links both with the bus station and the train station. We can provide experiences other stadiums in New Zealand can't, and we do believe we can be New Zealand's best loved stadium if we're not already. As I said, our purpose is to provide great experiences for people. We can't take care of what happens on the field, but what we wrap around that in terms of
sadly,
be a wonderful thing if we could. Concerts are a little bit easier, they're a bit more organised, but obviously sports events are a little bit more touch and go. But what we can wrap around that in terms of the monarchy that we can provide people when they come into our space is really important to us. And our strategies are those exceptional customer experiences, a stadium for now and the future, both looking at what we can do with the stadium now to make it a great experience, but also what that means over the next 10, 15, 20 years as we look to redevelop the stadium. And that's off the back of commercial, financial sustainability, and driven by really strong partnerships and stakeholder relationships. I'm happy to take any questions.
I think they're all out of questions at this point. Oh no, Councillor Panovich, thank you.
Yeah, there has been a lot of talk about the other stadiums coming online and the fact that they're all covered, so they're not affected by the weather as much. Do you think that's going to have an impact on our stadium?
New Zealand's 2 busiest stadiums at the moment are Eden Park and Sky Stadium, and neither of them have a roof. I think if you're building a new stadium in New Zealand, if you're future-proofing it for the next 50 years, you would build a roof for a variety of reasons. I think having Christchurch back online will affect us, just in the fact that there will be 4 major stadiums back in New Zealand, and that means content has got more options, and that includes both sporting content and non-sporting content. It will be a challenge. I think it'll be, if being honest, it's a bigger challenge for Dunedin in terms of content for the South Island, but we'll continue to work with our major hirers, and I think that point in our strategy around those really strong partnerships. It's about having strong partnerships with the likes of New Zealand football, New Zealand cricket, New Zealand rugby, our local hirers, but also those music promoters and promoters of other entertainment event to make sure that we get our fair share.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much. Really good result. Thank you. Are there any plans to bring the Edinburgh tattoo back to Wellington?
We are currently working with promoters on a variety of entertainment options, Councillor, and without going into too fine a detail, that may or may not be one of them.
Very specific question. Interesting.
Very non-specific answer.
All right. I think that's us. Thank you very much, Bo.
Thank you.
All right. Lisa,
No mai. Lisa's here for the Basin Reserve Trust, and I note that Alan Isaac is away, but welcome to you.
I think I've turned it off. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Lisa Jones tōku ingoa, ko Cricket Wellington tōku mahi. Hello everybody, my name is Lisa. I work for Cricket Wellington and I'm here today on behalf of the Basin Reserve Trust to present our annual report. And as noted, Alan sends his apologies. He is not here, so I'm here on my own. So we've had a great year at the Basin Reserve. Some of our highlights was the sold-out Black Caps Test match against Australia back in February, early March, which was a wonderful event for the city. Following on from that, the White Ferns had a 3-match series versus England here over Easter. It was noted that we had the best crowds for the White Ferns throughout New Zealand. So Wellington is definitely not just a venue of sport lovers, but a city of supporters of women's sport, and that doesn't go unnoticed throughout New Zealand. And it helps us. Our Wellington Blaze team, they won the Super Smash final. Unfortunately, they had to play that in Auckland despite being top qualifiers because the New Zealand cricket policy is to go where the men's top qualifiers are based. So we didn't get to host that at the Basin, but it was a great victory for our girls, and we're really looking forward to that starting up again in January. Our Firebirds, they were crowned the champions of the Plunket Shield, so that's our 4-day cricket format. So very successful seasons for both our teams there. I've spoken to you before, but definitely one of the biggest highlights for us was the Killikitty Festival. First time we'd held Killikitty at the Basin Reserve. We had about 1,500 people come along to that, and it was such a celebration, not just of Killikitty, which is the Pacific Island cricket, but also just cultural. We had a lot of young people singing, dancing, we had great food. It was a wonderful day, and we also attracted a lot of people just wandering through the basin, came to see what was happening, so it was a really great day. We hosted blind cricket and a D Sport Day at the Basin, and following on from that, we now have a monthly blind cricket event at the Basin and downstairs in the nets. So we were really cognizant that we didn't just want to have a one-off opportunity, that needs to be sustainable. So we've worked really hard on that. We had a sold-out beers at the Basin, although if anybody went, you remember the weather was horrific. And sadly, they have decided, you'll have seen, they've decided not to host it again this year, so we're just working through that. I'd like to acknowledge the fantastic work of Moira Smith from the Heritage Practice, who put together an outstanding heritage plan. This is a blueprint for the Basin Reserve going forward. Already it's helping us with our forward planning, and we know that whatever we do, we will preserve the heritage of the Basin now and in the future. We completed a couple of really important infrastructure projects, being the picket fence. So we now have a brand new picket fence there that will last us for a very, very long time. And storage shed, which I'll touch on in a minute. And also we commenced the project to replace the LED screen. Again, I will come to that. So yeah, our projects, our LED screen, it's been there since 2008. New Zealand Cricket owned it and brought it in for the summer, and we were not allowed to use it for any other activities. The age of it meant that it was very hard to see the replays and anything that we put up there, and also it became impossible to get replacement parts. So we've just embarked on a fairly major project to raise the money for that, and I would like to thank the council for their support of that, and I'm really pleased to say it went up last week and it is working really well. So that just opens the door to a lot of opportunities now for the Basin that we haven't had before. and a lot of community activities, so that's going to be our real focus going forward. I mentioned the storage shed. Whilst it may seem like a small thing, one of the challenges we have at the Basin is storage. Every available square centimetre is used, and having this storage shed there now has meant we were able to take a lot of things out of the RA Advanced stand and put them into the storage shed, so that's opened up a lot of space for us. And we've also just recently completed a security and lighting upgrade. So now we are on the council security system, which is fantastic. It gives us real peace of mind that the facility is being looked at 24/7. Obviously, with all of this wonderful work that's been done, we don't want anyone to come along and destroy it. So our financial year performance, we did better than budget, but some of the highlights for us, we attracted 53,800 people to the Basin, which was 8,800 more than we budgeted for, and obviously that's our number one priority, is to get people through our wonderful venue. That also meant that the event income was up for the year. It also meant that the cash subsidy from the council's operating grant came down. So all in all, we were really pleased with where we ended up from a finance and performance point of view. Quarter one update. We had junior football and rugby came back to the venue last year. We couldn't have it the year before because of the picket fence project, so it was great to see the young people out on the venue. And I had a few people come to me and say, we didn't realise you had junior sport there in the winter, which I thought was strange because we've done it for quite some time, but I think it's the opening up of the fence and people can actually see into the venue now, which means that they can actually see what's happening behind. Before that, we were a little bit behind closed doors. Our last project on the master plan was getting the sight screens replaced, so they are up and running. We did have a bit of a hiccup a couple of weeks ago with the horrific winds, where we found that they weren't quite as windproof as we had hoped. So we're doing some last-minute adjustments to them, but we're just grateful that it didn't happen on day one of the England test. Which brings me nicely to the England test and the international program for the summer. I was just sitting having a look. 4 weeks tomorrow is day one of the England test. So if anyone has any influence on weather, I'd ask you to call in a few favours. Day 1 to 3 is completely sold out. And with day 4, there's about 20% of tickets left, so that will sell out as well. If we are lucky enough to go to day 5, then that gets put on the market during day 4, and it's usually a free day. Nice to note that 27% of the tickets that have been sold are from out of Wellington, so it's bringing in the desired international market as well, with a big Barmy Army contingent heading our way. Shortly after that, we are hosting our champion White Ferns. We're really excited about that, and as a celebration, we're hosting the first White Fern game of the summer, and New Zealand Cricket have agreed to have free entry to the game. So we'll do a big marketing campaign. It's also the last day of primary schools for a lot of the schools, so we are targeting that as a great way to finish the year for our children. And then beginning of January, we host a one-day against Sri Lanka. So we have a very big Sri Lankan cricket community. Previously, the Sri Lankan Cricket Club had 2 teams. They are now sitting at 9 teams, and for the first time have some junior cricket teams as well. So they are terribly excited that they're going to get to come and see their national team. And as I mentioned, the LED screen project, this was quarter 1, was underway. It's now complete, so that's a huge infrastructure project for the stadium. And the last thing on our list of things that we need for the stadium is a permanent broadcast tower. Currently, it costs about $50,000 to bring the scaffolding for the broadcast tower in every year. And it also reduces the capacity of the venue because it's such a large structure. So that's what we will be turning our attention to next year, is looking at a project to be able to replace that. And then, yeah, I'm similar to the others. I don't have any dogs, but I will make a note for next year to put one in the Around on the right, obviously, a wonderful wahine playing kilikiti on the basin. Since that, actually, Cricket Wellington now have a kilikiti weekly competition. So again, whilst that was the start, we have managed to work from that, and now, yeah, there's a weekly kilikiti competition out in the hut. So that's really exciting. Photo there of our Southern Block hospitality area on a beautiful Wellington day with the basin in the background looking fantastic. Yeah, and that's the end of my presentation.
We do have a lot of questions.
Oh, no.
A late surge of interest. Councillor Young.
Thank you very much. So can you just shed some light on the mystery about the beers at the basin being postponed but has really been cancelled? And why?
Errata Promotions met with Ryan and I last week. The reasons they gave for that was they hadn't sold all the tickets, and normally by this stage they have sold the tickets. It's a sellout. Obviously, the weather last year would have had an impact on that, and his concern was around the vendors and that they could possibly cover the costs based on sales that they had. They could cover their costs, but he was concerned for his vendors. So they have booked a date in for next year. So we're hoping that that we'll be able to continue to have that going forward.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill. Okay. Councillor Free.
Hi, and I've been really pleased at how well the basin's looking because I drive past it quite often. The fence, though, the old wooden fence.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, I know you've probably got bigger plans, but it's missing pieces of wood. And my question was really, do you have the maintenance budget to routinely fix the bits of old fence that kind of
We do. It has been upgraded now, the bits that have been broken, particularly around that southern end. We find that that's the area where people try and break in, and that's part of the problem. It's not actually necessarily a problem with the fence, it's that people are just trying to get in when it's closed at night time.
I noticed there's some around the eastern side too.
Okay, I checked with our venue manager today and he said it has all been
okay, good.
All been done for the summer. I think he tries to wait a little bit so that we're not doing it constantly and just doing
Can I have one more?
No. Deputy Mayor Foon. I could put you back on the list, but I don't think we have time.
Kia ora, Lisa, thank you. And just conscious that you're sharing the space as a commuting route for walkers and people on bikes, and thank your team for putting up the signage about speed. That's been really good guidance. But yeah, just wanted to check how that sharing of space is working for you, and if you're having any altercations and you're okay about letting council know when that's becoming a challenge.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's fair to say that there has been some tension there. And I became a member of the cycling Facebook page and saw some commentary. So I went on and asked if we could meet, because it felt that the cycling community were going to the council and then we were going to the council, and it felt a little bit childish. So we had a fantastic meeting with some of the cycling community and came to some arrangements around, for example, when we're going to close the facility. Ryan will now let them know so they can let people know and the reason for that. There was a lot of misunderstandings. For example, where the ticketing booth goes during the summer, they asked if we could move that. We can't, because that's where the data cables and things sit under. So once we cleared up a few of those, it helped as well. There's certainly no altercations, and we love seeing people coming through. My concern is always the health and safety aspect, that one day we'll have a cricketer coming out to bat with a helmet and have no sort of peripheral vision. But we're trying on those days where we leave the ground open during just domestic cricket, that we encourage the cyclists to go on the other side of the ground, so that, So no, it's working well.
Thank you. Pauiwi Hohaia?
Kia ora, thank you. Wakefield Memorial, do you have any plans to do anything with that thing?
It's my understanding that Wakefield Memorial is owned by the council. It's not actually an asset of an asset.
Good to know, thank you.
Something that the Basin Reserve has any control over.
Great, thank you.
Councillor O'Neill, did you remember?
I did. I'm really keen to hear that you've talked about the top audience for women's sport and cricket, and I just wanted to hear about any forward planning for the coming season, about plans to keep that interest up and bring more women to the Basin.
Yeah, sure. So that's work that Cricket Wellington's really working hard on. And certainly the momentum since the girls have won the World Cup has been amazing. We had a trophy tour here. I'm not sure if any of you saw the trophy in Wellington on Tuesday morning. Unfortunately, we had a very narrow window of which it was in the city, but we took it to the railway station because we figured that was probably the best bang for buck at 7:30 in the morning in Wellington. So we had TV NZ Breakfast came along and did some promotion there. So New Zealand Cricket have got a lot of plans on the back of that to try and keep the women's cricket front of mind, and certainly our numbers of women playing. We've had an increase this season from a Cricket Wellington perspective.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for fielding all of those questions. Fielding, see what I did there? all those questions. Yeah, it's a bit of a mum joke. Thank you. Right, we will now move on to the paper. No mai, Jamie Crump, ki te hora I te kōrero. Welcome, Jamie Crump, to introduce the report.
E nā rangatira, tēnā koutou, no mai haere mai, CCO whānau. In introducing this CCO 23-24 financial year annual report, I just really like to reiterate what you've all heard this morning from our CCO whānaus. There is so much to celebrate with our CCO successes, and they deliver a huge amount of positivity to Pōneke. Happy to take any pātai.
Okay, Councillor Abdurrahman.
I think for me everything that looks perfect, but since you are the person who engage with them most of the time, is there any worry that you have which we might not picked in this case?
Nothing that hasn't already been discussed in the paper or in the in Q&A and in questions that have come through.
Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. Thank you, Jamie. And Councillor O'Neill is going to move the paper. We are on a little bit of a tight deadline to make our lunch date with our CCO friends, just to everyone. But I'm over to you, Councillor O'Neill, for some remarks.
Yeah, I thought I'd just take the time because there's so much there's lots to be positive about. And reading these annual reports have been just a good uplift globally and nationally. And even across the city, sometimes things are looking a bit tired. We know we've got cost of living, higher interest rates, stagnant GDP growth. But despite all this, Wellington is achieving in so many areas. And so, yeah, the Basin upgrades, hearing that we've got the top audience in women's cricket and sport, the cable car, extending a concession to students, community service card holders and gold card holders, just to kind of respond to the climate that we're in. Museums Wellington is definitely not like other museums, is their latest media tagline, and they've been driving a lot of educational content, I know, out to several schools and on social media as well. We've just had 2 All Black matches. We're going to ramp up for the rest of the season at the stadium. Over 80 performances, $73 million in total spend on Wellington's economy, supporting 90 businesses and workshops, and marketing with a 96% satisfaction rate with Wellington NZ. And I really feel like those stories aren't highlighted a lot of the time. So I do think that we have to, when we get the opportunity, to sing the praises for many of our CCOs. Just lastly, at the zoo, 18 Whittaker's skinks are extinct, and the wild North Island of New Zealand and critically endangered. We've also had a baby muku kakariki, my favourite animal, in the last year, which is pretty cool. And then Zealandia's Hamilton's frogs released, the first out of captivity in the wild, and this is after decades of research. So they are now the only roaming population of this endangered species on mainland Aotearoa. Both of these last 2 organisations play a huge role in reversing species loss and contributing to Aotearoa's mark on the national tourism. So I just wanted to take that little bit of time to highlight a lot of the good news stories of Wellington, and I think it's really important where it might feel like a whole bunch of other things are being lit on fire as we speak, to ground ourselves in our neighbours, you know, and just take a second to really appreciate the mahi that we've been able to achieve over the last year and annual report. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, Councillor. Did you have a seconder? Councillor Panovich is going to second. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with all the comments made by Councillor O'Neill. I'd just like to acknowledge the CCOs and the work they do. The thing I've noticed most is that they are proactive, not reactive, which is a good thing. And also the ones that have councillors on them, we can easily have access to the entities. And the one thing I do always say to people when they ask me what's there to do in Wellington, I go, well, I list the CCOs because they are a great asset to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Foon.
Yeah, kia ora. Just a big mihi to all of our CCO whānau, and I think, you know, overall you are providing the manaaki for our manuhere that come to our city, and you do a great job of it. You are providing kotahitanga for all of our species and people and assets, and so just really want to thank you for the uplifting stories that you've brought into our place today. Much appreciated.
Councillor Free.
Yes, just very quickly. I mean, I've listened to many CCO reports over the time I've been on council, but I have to say this was an exceptional set of very encouraging reports, both from financial and non-financial aspects. So really commend the work that you've all done, and I think the city's actually in really good hands, letting your organisations look after these specific aspects of our work. Thank you.
So anybody else? Oh, Councillor Abdurrahman.
Cool. I second all that has been said, but I would like to say really thank you so much, especially for Sky Stadium, for welcoming and being inclusive, especially from the Muslim community, the celebration of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, which was attended by most of the councillors, and their presence was actually really appreciated, and that is really a good thing to see our community coming together. The first, yesterday you will be celebrating someone drinking beer, enjoying around. The next day football, and then the next day, and some people also praying, and just like that is the kind of community we have. That is the kind of space utilization, what that looks like. And the second one goes, thank you to you all again. And the second one is for Wellington Zoo for hosting Neighbours Day, where the zoo neighbours come together and enjoy what the zoo offers for free over barbecue. And that is also a really good community spaces. I think you guys are doing great, and I hope other CCOs also watching, and they're going to encourage more of those kind of activities. Thank you.
Do you wish to have a right of reply, Councillor O'Neill? Yes, tiny little one.
Just briefly to acknowledge the mahi of David Perks and Jane Wrightson and all of our CCOs, our chairs, our CEOs. A lot of them have been serving on our boards for a really long time, and their service to Wellington, so to acknowledge the departing people.
Thank you so much, Councillor. We'll go to the vote, and while we go to the vote, I just want to also acknowledge the work of Jamie Crump in particular and Anna Calver, that we've seen, such an improvement in the relationships and the communication between our organisation and the CCO. So also to acknowledge you. Are you online, Councillor McNulty, to vote? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. We will now break for lunch, and we will go and have an opportunity to socialise with our CCO whānau. So we're going down to level 8, and we'll be back here. If we could do it all in half an hour, that would be amazing. So run for a lift. Move on to the next item, which is the CCO Q1 report. Oh, Jamie Crump, sorry, and I had to make you. I'm sorry that I denied you the pleasure of cake and socialising as well. No mai, Jamie Crump, ki te hora I te kōrero.
Hei Marie, as I mentioned earlier, there's much to celebrate with the positive contribution that our CCO whānau make for Pōneke. Happy to take any pātai on the Q1 24-25 report.
There appear to be no pātai. Thank you, Jamie. So Councillor O'Neill will move the report.
I move the report.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor? Councillor Panovich is going to second. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Panovich? You're going to say, I second the report.
I second the report.
I believe the Deputy Mayor wishes to speak.
I was only trying to second.
Oh, beautiful. Is there any debate? There appears to be none. All right, let's go to a vote. All right, that is carried. We now move on to our next item. I understand we're bringing our guests from Tito Mahana. There. Oh, look. We were just too efficient, Paul. And is our chair online?
Andrew, I've just rung him, he's died.
Okay, oh, look. I'm just saying things and they're happening. That never. All right. No mai, Paul, Daniel and Anne here and Andrew online. Kia ora, Andrew. To present the Tito Mahana quarterly report and take any questions.
Kia ora koutou. I'm pleased to be here today to present the first quarterly report from council officers and Tito Mahana for FY 24-25. As you'll remember, these reports provide operational updates and strategic insights from the Trust for Q1, July to September 24, and focuses on the Trust's appointment. I'd ask that you take our report as read. As Councillor Matthews has stated, very pleased to be joined online by the Chair of Tito Mahana, Andrew Turner, Acting GM Anne Smith, and GM Tenancy Daniel Tai. Kia ora.
Did anybody else wish to say anything before we go to questions? No. All right, Councillor Pennant.
Thank you for your work. And I did put some questions through, but now I've got some more questions. So part of the reason that Council voted to create the Community Housing Trust was to access these IRRs. But we're looking at 8.8%, and I understand it's partly because of the high turnover, so the people currently there aren't eligible. So I guess my questions are around, is that likely to change? Because it's a very, very small percentage. And my second question actually was around the rent increases. You know, are you stress testing to see whether people can afford the percentage of market valuations? Kia ora.
I'm happy to answer both of those questions, and it may be that Dan or Anne have got something to add once I've done so. The IRS we always knew would be a relatively slow uptake because it is tied to the turnover in the units. You'll see from our report that the IRS targets for this quarter are ahead of projections, but it was always expected that this would be a slow build-up over time. We're pleased to see the number of IRS tenancies increasing. Of course, we know the financial benefit in that occurring, and the faster that can happen, the better, but it is targeted to turnover. And we also need to have a view of the number of new tenancies that are coming in, as opposed to For example, when we get into the HUP2 program, tenants been moved from one complex to another to allow for HUP2 to occur, which in itself will slow down the uptake of those new IRS tenancies, as we don't necessarily have the vacancies to accommodate those new tenants. But I would draw your attention to the information in the report that shows that for this period, we're ahead of target with those IRS tenancies. However, we always knew that this would be a reasonably slow uptake and build-up of IRS over time.
Andrew,
now,
yes, thank you.
The rent increases.
The rent increases, yeah, absolutely. And again, you'll see from the report that the rent increase that we've put in place is at the low to median of market rent. The rent increase we put in place was on the back of a period of no rent increases previously as we came through the COVID years. And yes, the board did take a particular view of rent increases with a particular focus on the financial sustainability of our organisation, which of course is important to us and important to you as council. We are stress testing that. You'll see that there have been community meetings relating to the affordability of rent and tenant meetings, and a particular focus on the affordable rent limit subsidy. We, in response to tenant feedback, clarified the wording on our website, and there's been something of an education project as to the affordable rent limit subsidy, and that a tenant can access that. And there's a lot of hand-holding goes on from our tenancy managers as we move through those processes. We're very mindful, particularly given the current cost of living crisis, of the effect on our tenants of these rent increases. And it's for that reason that we have drawn our tenants' attention to the affordable rent limit subsidy. And if tenants are suffering hardship, the first thing we would want them to do would be to talk to their tenancy managers so that they can point them in the direction of that subsidy, or indeed other subsidies and support that may be available to them.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
In general, regards to the underspent funding, what is the consequence of directing that funding into something else if this council decides to?
Might need to be a bit more specific, Councillor.
So there is underspent funding, about 7.4 million. I'm not sure exactly the figure. So what it means if that figure is diverted into another area of council work instead of reserving it for Tito Mahana.
It was the better off funding.
Yep.
Councillor, the better off funding was paid to Tito Mahana as per council's decision within 3 weeks of the CHIP being established in August 23. The CHIP, I understand, is working on how that funding is to be applied. That funding cannot be used for anything else but the decisions made by the Tito Mahana board.
Councillor McNulty.
G'day. On the weekend, this isn't an EMQ, but since there's the opportunity here, there was a piece in the paper about some land parcels up for sale, including the land underneath the Bachelor Street flats in Newlands. I was just wondering if that's in the genesis of TTM at the moment to think about whether that's an opportunity and being looked at.
Yeah, that's something that would fit as part of our property strategy, which we had a workshop on a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to be doing some more work on as we move into the new year. In fact, the previous question and this question both relate to external factors such as government policy settings and possible future funding support settings for the community housing sector, and how they may affect our policy strategy, and in fact how they may affect our equitable use of that existing tenant support fund. I probably would turn to Anne, our acting chief executive, to talk about that particular piece of land and where that might fit in our considerations. Certainly it's something that you've highlighted, so it's something that we should be considering, but that would be in the context of that wider property strategy that we, as I say, had a workshop on and are currently working on, or will be working on as we move into the new year. But Anne, I don't know whether you had any comment on that particular piece of land or whether it's something we should be picking up.
It was just brought to my attention the other day by Paul. Sorry. It was brought to my attention the other day from Paul, so it's something that hadn't been on the radar, but certainly we'd look at any options as we carefully consider that, how we develop those properties, but that's certainly something that we can look at. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question next, which was just to kind of add to that conversation that was happening about the IRRS places. It might be good for someone to briefly describe the government policy settings, what is effectively a cap on IRRS places across the community housing sector, and how, just describing that briefly and how we're thinking about that at this point.
Yeah, so Anne or Dan, I might turn to you for the detail on that one, please.
Okay, so we were allocated 380 IRRS places when we became a CHIP. At the moment, we're 155 placements, and we're actually working with MHUD to see whether we can transfer over any of the unallocated places, which are due to expire 1 July next year. So we're just applying for those places to be rolled over. MHUD has advised that our funding is ring-fenced, so you'll be aware that there's limited additional IRRS places available for CHIPs. They're allocating the first 500 of 1,500 that was put into the last government budget, and we're not quite sure. We're waiting for an announcement, I think this month, from MHUD Minister about how those places will be allocated, but we have that 380 spaces, and we're looking to extend that past next year if they're unallocated.
Councillor Calvert.
Yes, it's under new supply delivery, and I'm just wondering when we'll start seeing some targets. I appreciate that you're waiting for more information from the government, but given that we've transferred properties to your ownership to develop, just wondering when we will get to see some plans around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would refer you to the previous comment I made. So we've had a detailed workshop on the property strategy, and there we realised that there is a tension between doing, I think, what we all would like to do, which is to start developing those properties as soon as we possibly can, and working out what the policy settings, or knowing what the policy settings and the environment in which we will be developing will be. So we've identified a number of opportunities, but we really are waiting for those government policy settings to be known before we develop any firm development plans. If there are particular policy settings or particular funding opportunities available to us, for the sake of waiting for what will be just a matter of months in order to have knowledge of those and to be able to take advantage of those, certainly makes some sense. But to start thinking about, quite seriously, the way that we will use those gifted properties to develop new supply, obviously that's something we've started doing, but waiting for those government policy settings to be confirmed before we embark on any significant expenditure and firm plans on that new supply delivery. I appreciate the purpose of the transfer from council, and I'm as aware of anybody of the urgency to be delivering that new supply, but we need to make sure we do it in the most financially sustainable and financially beneficial way.
I have a follow-up question. This is for our officer, not for the actual Tito Mahana, but from a council perspective, when we transferred the properties and provided cash, what requirements did we have, or what time frame did we have for delivery?
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Firstly, we haven't transferred the development capital to Tōtōpū Mahana yet. In the lease agreement and the agreements made by council, once Tōtōpū Mahana has development plans and wishes to access any of the $23 million, they must bring those plans to council, and we need to ensure that the delivery of new housing, one of the key drivers of establishing the trust, is met and delivered, and that we see value for money in the $23 million you agreed to.
Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Thank you. Given that one of the key reasons to establish the trust was the take-up of IRRS, and it's time limited, our offer from the government, does it make sense to defer some of the upgrades if they would be actually limiting our ability to take on new tenants and get those IRRSs locked in?
For Paul, in terms of Hub 2.
Yeah.
All Hub 2 decisions will be discussed as a part of the LTP reset and revisit. Councillor Free, we can't say anything else apart from
But
that
what I
now.
wanted was advice, and I thought you were the person to ask.
We're happy to give that and provide it through the LTP process.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, that seems to be the end of the question. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pennant.
Sorry, just following on from Councillor Matthews' question. So then would you expect, I mean, obviously you can't see what government policy will do, but are we going to see a significant number of tenants accessing that subsidy, or is it always going to be at quite low levels? And what are we going to do then about making sure that that rent stays affordable if they're not going to be able to access the subsidy?
Yeah, I mean, the ability to house new IRS tenants is always going to be limited by the vacant properties that we have available. That's always going to be tied to turnover. And I made that comment about the Hub 2 movements in regard to that as well, because of the effect of that. But I mean, our intention is to have as many new IRS tenancies as we possibly can, but realising that there are limitations, not because of the number of IRS tenants available, but because of the vacancies within the portfolio to allowing that. We would be particularly concerned if we weren't able to carry over any unused IRS from this financial year into the next financial year, given that our expectation is that we're working obviously closely with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development to house as many people as sustainably as we possibly can, and that means enabling the full uptake of that IRS that's been allocated. That's obviously a government budgetary decision. It's not a decision for Tito Mahana, but it's one that we need to work with as best we can.
All right, I think that is now the end of the questions. Thank you, everyone. I will now pass over to Councillor Rogers, who is going to move the paper.
Kia ora, colleagues, and thank you to the Te Toi Mahana team for coming in, zooming in, and to Paul for also being here. It was good to hear the questions about affordability of rent. We know for many people in Pōneke it is a challenging time, and we did hear, I and a couple of us around this table have heard from some of the residents at Te Toi Mahana about their, trialling times at the moment, and I was quite satisfied with the response from Te Toi Mahana, as was briefly alluded to, about how they were able to connect with their residents and actually have really good conversations with them about how they can be supported in affording rent. And a lot of that is actually from the fruits of this table that has established the idea of these working groups through our city housing program, which is now coming full into Te Toi Mahana. They have both a maintenance working group and a policy working group. But also, if any of the Te Toi Mahana tenants are reaching out to you, especially ones who were existing before the trust was established, it is just good to remind them that if they are over 80, they get a rent freeze. There are rent caps for people who are living in Te Toi Mahana housing. Individuals can't receive an increase of more than $20 a week, and there's also some increases there for family and groups. Alongside that, there was also some confusion about the affordable rent limit subsidy, which limits rent payments to 35% of their income, and I was really happy with the work that Te Toi Mahana was able to do with their tenants, making sure that the correct information was out there and so that people could apply for those subsidies. So while they have been setting up the CHIP, it is really good to see some of those core values that we had when we wanted it to be established about the affordability of rent for our tenants continuing to play out. And as they come up with their property development plan, I look forward to us being able to get some more of those IRRS tenancies that were alluded to that are currently restricted, and also being able to house more people at an affordable rate. So I look for your support in this paper.
And I believe Koiwi Ohio is going to second. Do you wish to speak? Hold it. Okay. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Pannett.
I'd obviously like to thank Tito Mahana for the work that they're doing. Good people trying to do good work. But I perhaps would say that I didn't feel I got the answers that I wanted to some of my questions. And so maybe, look, I need to take this offline. But I do feel that we were sold this idea that we were going to get more people on IRRS. Now, as you remember, colleagues who were around the table last training, I was the only one to vote against it because, you know, I have a particular view around council services. But it's just a little bit disappointing. Now, I hear from the chair that, you know, that it is about, you know, and it's, in a way, it's good that people aren't moving on. I get that there's constraints around government policy, but it's absolutely critical that we get more people paying affordable rent. And I think we need more of a strategy than, I think it was Councillor Fitzsimons that worked on that affordable rent subsidy and maybe some others last training, to make sure that it is going to continue to be affordable, because what we've got coming up is very, very sharp increases in costs of providing housing. Like, insurance is going to be really, really difficult, and we've got to adapt our buildings to climate change. So I think there is room for more discussion, just given that there was such a strong drive to set up this ship for the best interests of our tenants. But just ending on a more positive note, looks like things are being well managed and well run. Although I would like to see more of a voice for tenants and real power, given social housing unfortunately does engender quite a lot of control over tenant lives. So that again is maybe for a further discussion. Kia ora.
Councillor Calvert.
Yes, just following on from Councillor Pannett's comments about affordable, I think the issue we've got at the moment is our social housing isn't affordable not only to our tenants but to us. We've got, in our 10-year plan, we've got CapEx budget of 592 million, but we've also got an operational cost of over 300 million. So it doesn't matter whether you think we should have social housing or we shouldn't have. We have got a big looming problem that I don't think we've really addressed, and we really need to be able to have some conversations about how we can better address that, because the other thing is we're also not accounting or funding all the depreciation that we need to do as well. So we need to have a conversation about, because social housing is meant to be ring-fenced from ratepayers, but at the moment we're putting those operational costs onto debt. So I don't have the answers, but I think we need to start having conversations about this, and especially in light of our LTP amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Firstly, I'd like to say that I was really pleased to note that all of the 1,600 or so housing units meet the Healthy Home Standard. So that was heartening. But I think we've got a major issue here. This whole thing was set up with the understanding that we would get eventually everyone pretty much would be qualified for IRRS. And if that's not the model, I think we really need to take a serious look at how this is going to work. This is something we can't ignore for our LTP amendment, given that people around the table collectively have voted not to sell the airport shares. We're now in a financially very different situation than we'd be if we had. Well, it is true. And
point of order, unnecessary points bringing here is not going to be helpful, Madam
That's
Chair.
not a point of order. Carry on, Councillor.
Okay. There is an issue, and I do not believe that we can solve our LTP issue without having a very serious look at how this is going to work going forward. And, you know, it's also a concern that the the process of actually upgrading houses, which we do need to do, will make it even less likely that we can have the spaces to increase the uptake of IRRS while the government's got it on the table. Anyway, I'm very concerned, so we'll wait and see what other advice we get.
Pauiwi Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just, I'm actually trying to calm myself down here. Can I just remind councillors that we didn't vote for Tito Mahana to be set up just because we would be getting the IRRS payments. What we voted for was this was the solution, because Wellington City Council didn't have the 200 million that they would have to repay to the government because we hadn't done what we were supposed to do. And I think you're all forgetting that fact. So where we landed was that if we set up our own housing organisation, we would be able to address that gap, and the government were quite happy to go along with our proposal. But you're also forgetting that IRRS is only available to new tenants. So the reason why it is low is because we've still got tenants in there. So we can't kick anybody else. We can't kick anyone out. If you kick some, well, you're not allowed to kick them out anyway. So the only way you can get IRS, the income-related subsidy, is if we get a new tenant that comes into the home. Now, Tito Mahana haven't told you that we have actually had some cases where we went to HUD and expressed real concern for the hardship that was happening, and they actually made allowances for those tenants to get the subsidy. But that isn't something that is available to everyone else. And what you also need to remember is this 1,500 that's in the budget is for all the chips in the whole of New Zealand. It's not just for here. So what the biggest concern is that we've got is that our allocated amount that we can get for the IRRS is 380. So what we've been told here today is that the concern that Te Toi Mahana has is not that we only have 155, but we don't want to miss out. We don't want government to pull the plug on the 380 that we have already been allocated. So that's what they're trying to tell you is the concern. But you need to remember, for our tenants to get this subsidy, we were always told, we had numerous workshops, numerous hui, where we were told what would happen and how it wasn't going to be a quick fix. That for Dunedin, I think it took 3.5 years before they actually were able to start to get any sort of numbers. But we've had many challenges, and Te Toi Mahana, our representatives here today, have tried to express that to you. But I think you're all forgetting the key thing here is we didn't do this just for our tenants to get affordable income. We did this to get us out of the poo because Wellington City Council hadn't invested the money that they were supposed to have invested over those 10 years or whatever it was. And if we didn't come up with a solution, we were going to have to pay that 200 million. So just remember that, eh? Sorry, I'm trying to calm down because the ones that are bringing this up were at the table. You were all at the table when we had these discussions.
Point of order, it's incorrect information. I fully understand about IRS.
Okay.
What's the incorrect?
Pauiwi Liz, be seated, please. We will now move on with debate. Deputy Mayor Fung. You did not. Councillor Brown.
I'd like to know what the incorrect information is.
We're going to move on with the conversation.
I'd just like to make one small point, and that is that obviously we are providing this housing for people who in many cases are vulnerable and unable to afford alternatives in the market. And you know, we have this weird dilemma because, of course, the quicker people leave us and go somewhere else, the more we can bring in IRRS tenants. But of course, the nicer the accommodation or the better the deal we're actually providing to our tenants, the less likely they are to leave. And of course, that means the slower the IRRS. So there is this unfortunate balance, which I think the team at Tito Mahana are doing a very good job of achieving, of making the accommodation that we provide affordable and pleasant and looking after people, which means they want to stay. But the flip side of that is that we get in fewer IRRS people than would otherwise be the case. So I think the balance has actually been maintained quite well, but it's always going to be slightly arguable about should we make life a little bit tougher for our tenants so that they move out more quickly and we have more new people coming in who get the IRRS, or should we be a little bit more generous, in which case, or a little bit, invest more heavily in our tenant services. But I actually think the balance which our team have achieved has been a really good one. And we are pretty well on track in terms of the expected rate of turnover and remember that the government allocation, the 380, is about a quarter of our tenants. So we are expecting that once we're fully allocated 380 places, it will be about a quarter of our tenants will be IRRS tenants. And we expect to achieve that in the space of a couple of years. But because we have been a nice place for people to live and affordable, the turnover has been a little bit less than what was originally expected. But that's not a bad thing. I think that's something which we should be quite proud of, actually.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, kia ora. I just wanted to take the opportunity. Poe Kelly pointed out some really important facts around the history of our need for a chip. And as we go into the LTP amendment, I've certainly, and everyone around the table would have received those emails too, with magic solutions to our financial issues, and that we can just sell off our social housing stock and we will suddenly fix the problems. Let's remember in 2007, when the deal was inked with the Clark government, the liability at that time was about $120 million to the council had we picked up our half. We have been through mayors Prendergast, Wade Brown, Lester, Foster, and none of those mayors or the councils that they led decided to pick up that $120 million tab. And I think by 2018, we were at around the 250, 260 mil mark. I might be slightly off with my figures here. And today we're in the place of our HUP2 liability being 600 million. So there is an incredibly important story in this of what happens when we don't pull weight, when we kick things down the road. And as we go into this LTP amendment, of course, if there is any way to find savings that don't impact on the quality of the work that we're doing for our tenants, we should look for that. But there is no magic solution here on our housing, social housing, and its financial implications. For those people that have emailed, and I'm speaking more to those emails that have come through and think we could just sell it off. There's a $600 million liability attached to these assets, and I'm not for a second willing to sell it off, but I'm saying let's be realistic about what that $600 million liability is. So I'm proud, I'm really happy, Mayor, that you've outlined as part of the principles for the LTP amendment that the social housing is something that must happen, because if we don't do it now, 600 million will become 800 million before it becomes $1 billion, and we'll add a few more mayors into that list that I've just rattled off. So thank you, TTM, for the work that you do. But really, this is an incredibly critical point for us councillors to be mindful of that. Previous councils have kicked the can. We are now picking it up. But to kick it further would just be an abhorrent dereliction of our duty as city councillors. Kia
ora. Councillor Chung.
Is there a minimum amount of time that our tenants could actually vacate their units and then return as a IRRS tenant?
No.
They can't. Yeah.
You can ask, yeah. All right, you can ask your question of the mover, Councillor Chung, if you want to say it again.
The answer's no.
Has he asked the question? Okay.
Is there a minimum amount of time? If one of our tenants leaves, is there a minimum amount of time away from the unit to be able to come and reapply for a IRS subsidy?
So Councillor Rogers will answer that as part of his right of reply. Councillor Pennant, have you already already spoken? No, I'm not going to have you speak
no,
again.
hang on.
No,
That's
I'm
not-
not.
no,
I'm
no.
not. That is my ruling. I'm not having everybody speak twice.
That is actually not permissible within standing orders, and previous councils have been
Okay, I'll
criticised.
pause and take advice.
No, you can't.
I will pause and take advice because if everybody speaks twice on everything. No, can we pause and take advice?
You're the chair.
I'm adjourning briefly to take advice, councillor. And people need to calm down. And I am going to allow you to speak, which I have to do as chair. However, I would like us to agree that we do not do this. Because if we all speak multiple times in every debate, we will become even more inefficient than we are now with our time. So I will set the timer. Councillor Pennant.
I will be very brief and try to keep the temperature down, but I do just want to speak very briefly. With the best of intentions, former Prime Minister Helen Clark and National Aligned Mayor Kerry Prendergast tried to come up with a solution, because remember, that housing was going to be sold by a Conservative council. And I think the idea was that the rent was supposed to cover the money. That was not to be realised. Back in 2008, things were very, very different. We had a massive earthquake in Christchurch. Insurance went up. Building costs went up. The healthy home standards came in without any subsidy. And so we had enormous increases in costs and a model that just fundamentally didn't work. Social housing is expensive to look after. I'm personally very proud to, so we needed a better source of income. And the other point is, we did excellent work to make sure that our housing, like go to the Nairn Street apartments, for example, were done by Wellington City Council with money. All we needed was some more money from the government, because it was never a realistic amount to be given. And so I think we certainly can do it. We just need a proper source of funding. And I think we were told really clearly that we would get more of the subsidy. And again, the system is broken because both ruling parties will not give local government the subsidy. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm now going to go to Councillor Rogers for his right of reply.
Yeah, I saw some chatting over the table. I mean, briefly to answer your question, Councillor Chung, there isn't a period. I mean, broadly speaking, it is the requirement for being on the social housing wait list that makes you eligible for the income-related rent subsidy. So there are definitely conditions around that, around the way that you are currently housed. So that would have implications for being able to get onto the list. And given the way that placements are done, it's not necessarily that you as a tenant apply to the council, the community housing provider. They seek options from the waitlist, which is prioritised by the central government, and then they're able to make a choice from the options that they're given. So it's not necessarily this simple case of just being able to have someone move out for 24 hours and put them back in. It's quite a complex process. It's trying to balance up people who have been waiting for a long time and people who have already got housing. So hopefully that answers your question, but I'm free to respond more if you want outside with that. I think there's been some good discussion around the table, but I do just want to make sure that we keep HUP2 and Te Toi Mahana questions kind of separate, because HUP2 is our liability and our responsibility for the housing that we provide to Te Toi Mahana. It's not necessarily an obligation of the trust in itself, so it'd be good to keep that debate for when we're making decisions about our financing of our assets. So thank you very much.
Now going to go to the vote, councillors. I just want to emphasise, I think many people did not cover themselves with glory during that debate, and I do want to note about our behaviour, and because we are being watched, and I just want us to conduct ourselves with a little bit more decorum, and also I guess just to note, I've made that clear at the beginning of chairing this committee, that I'm not going to allow points of order which are just, an attempt to kind of sideline debate. So that continues to be my position as chair. Anyway, we will go to the vote. Thank you.
Should be both sides.
And when I'm in the chair, I will not be talked back to by councillors. I'm not having it. All right, we now move to the next item. That is carried. 2.5, decision register updates and upcoming reports. Andrea Reeves.
I will take the paper as read.
Are there any questions, councillors? There appear to be none. I will move. Oh, sorry, Tony. Councillor Randall.
Yes, there's an item in the forward program about CCOs. What does CCO mean?
Council controlled organisation.
Okay, thank you.
I will move the item. Councillors, please be quiet. I will now move the item. Councillor Panovich will second.
Yes.
Wasn't a question, John. Oh, no, I assumed nobody wanted to debate. We're going straight to the vote. All right, we are now going to move, we're nearly there. We are now going to move to go into public excluded in order to protect the privacy of natural persons. I will move that. Councillor O'Neill will second. Is there any debate? All right, we'll go to the vote. That is carried. We will just take a second to turn off the live stream.
Anna.
Yeah, thank you.
Tēnā kua mutu te hui, me karakia tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapunui, kia wā. Te tinana te wā. I te ara takatū, koi ara e rongo, whakairia aki ki runga, kia wātia, aira, kua wātia. Thanks team, have a